Testing. Testing.
Public Meetings Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of this act, it is safe at this time. Seeing none, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please, if you haven't done it already. Roll call, please, Karen.
Yes. Mr. Becerra. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Riggs.
Here.
Mr. Crowley. Mr. Gorgone.
Here.
Mayor Mullick.
Here.
Deputy Mayor McDade.
Here.
Mrs. Reed. Mr. Lundholm.
Here.
Mr. Paducas.
Here.
Mr. Crippen.
Here.
Thank you.
We have one resolution for approval dated 4/8/2025. It's 409 Elmira LLC, 409 Elmira Street, Block 1060, Lot 33. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Crippen, seconded by Mr. Paducas. Mr. Gorgone?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McDade?
Abstain.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Mr. Paducas?
Yes.
Mr. Crippen?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Minutes, we have approvals. First one is dated March 11, 2025. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Gorgone motions, Mr. Crippen seconds. Mr. Gorgone?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor McDade?
Approve.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Abstain.
Mr. Paducas?
Yes.
Mr. Crippen?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second set of minutes is dated March 25, 2025.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorgone, seconded by Mr. Crippen. Mr. Gorgone?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McDade?
Abstain.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Abstain.
Mr. Riggs?
Abstain.
Mr. Paducas?
Yes.
Mr. Crippen?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Karen, I made a mistake. On the minutes for March 11th, I voted yes. I was not there. I abstained.
Okay, I'll make that correction. Thank you.
We have a couple housekeeping items we want to take place first. We have a pretty big meeting this evening. We want to approve our payment of bills earlier, so we have two sets of bills. Anyone want to make a motion to approve both sets at the same time?
Make a motion to approve.
Both sets.
I'm sorry, was that a second by Mr.?
Yes.
Okay, so a motion by Mr. Paducas, seconded by Mr. Crippen. Mr. Gorgone?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McDade?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley? Yes. Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Mr. Paducas?
Yes.
Mr. Crippen?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second item we would like to discuss is, we're thinking about moving our meeting, Mari, why don't you, okay?
So I had put forth a request to consider moving the meeting time from 6:30 to an earlier time for several reasons. One, for just to be able to be mindful of the volunteer members of the committee from a timing standpoint. Second of all, this is staffed by city members, so I'm sure they would appreciate not having to start a meeting at 6:30. We've made meeting time changes in for other meetings within the city and have seen no negative impact. So we're taking an informal poll of the committee at this point in time to consider whether or not moving the meeting to, would be open to 5:30 or 6 o'clock.
I will speak, and I'm open to 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I think starting earlier also allows for, our professionals and us as board members to start to dive into some of the topics that we normally, may not have time to in an evening. And yes, we do have city staff here as well, so it would certainly be greatly appreciated. So I'm in support of that.
I'm fine with backing it up a bit, but 5:30 would be a real challenge for me to get here. 6 o'clock's fine.
Okay, fair enough.
6 o'clock's fine with me.
Okay, all right, okay, so, all right.
Well, this,
The only thing I would say is 6 o'clock is better for me, but also, if you're going to move your time up, you might want to consider clarifying what your cutoff time is, because in my experience, you move it up and you think you're going to end earlier, and what you end up doing is just being stuck there longer. So you give some thought to maybe setting, if you
Yeah,
it's 10
certainly.
o'clock now, maybe 9:30.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't care, I'm just giving you that heads up, because I've
Yeah.
seen that
We will talk,
dynamic in action.
we will talk internally and make sure that we have those parameters set forth. Thank you, everyone, for the time and consideration.
okay, now we're up, tonight's application is Avu LLC, 6 Second Avenue, Block 1012, Lot 15.01. Site plan, preliminary and final approval, variance relief for hardship and substantial benefit. You're on. Another item for this evening, if the meeting goes for a long period of time, which it may, we're going to cut it off around 10 o'clock. Okay, so everybody knows ahead of time if we have to. Not in the middle of the sentence, but we'll do it at a convenient time. You're on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Appreciate your time here tonight. To briefly introduce myself, my name is Peter Chicanius. I am an attorney at the law firm of Highland Levin Shapiro. My office is located in Marlton, New Jersey, up in Burlington County. My office represents the applicant, Avu LLC. I'll probably just refer to them as Avu or the applicant from here on out. With respect to this application, as the chairman mentioned, this is for preliminary and final major site plan approval with bulk variances to construct a new hotel on the property located at 6 Second Avenue, Block 1012, Lot 15.01, Cape May, New Jersey. I did want to briefly introduce the application, discuss some of what the board is going to be hearing from our professionals, just to kind of give you a brief introduction. We're going to have 4 witnesses testifying here tonight. We also have a representative from the applicant, if necessary, to answer certain questions, but he doesn't anticipate testifying quite yet. First, we're going to have our architect, Mr. Stephen Fenwick, speak about and you're already seeing some of the easel and the pictures up here, what's there now versus what will be there. Then we will have our traffic engineer, Mr. David Shropshire, testify as to the traffic and the parking. We will then have Mr. Mike Marshall testify as to the operational standpoint, how the hotel is actually going to operate. And I'm sure some of the board members are aware, we have been before this board before with respect to this property and attempts to construct a new hotel on this property before. The operational aspect was the item that I think was probably missing from those previous applications to kind of reflect how is this going to operate on a day-to-day basis with respect to the number of employees, trash, recycling, things like that. And Mr. Marshall is well-versed in not only the running of a hotel, but also Cape May, as his company also is very familiar and in fact runs, and he'll clarify this if I'm incorrect, but I believe his company runs the Inn of Cape May. So he's very familiar with the area and what the city needs. As for this particular, and then finally, our last witness is going to be Mr. Andrew Schaefer, who's going to be testifying both as our engineer and as our planner to kind of close things out and discuss the positive and negative criteria. This property, again, 6 Second Avenue, is zoned C3 Hotel Motel District, and I would note that it expressly permits the hotel that we're proposing here tonight. It also permits eating establishments, drinking establishments, and, quote, Uses which are clearly incidental and accessory to the uses by right, including dining or other service facilities, provided such uses may not occupy the equivalent of more than 25% of the total floor area of the principal use. And one thing that our engineer will testify to is that the proposed amenities on site will be limited to, will not be more than 25% of the total floor area of the principal use. The other thing that I wanted to touch on a little bit was the type of hotel that my client is proposing here tonight, because it's a little different from some of the previous applications that no doubt many of the members of the public are familiar with here tonight. This is proposed to be an all-inclusive luxury resort-style hotel, which means that every amenity in the hotel is going to be limited strictly to hotel guests. And per Mr. Mike Marshall, as he'll testify to later, enforcing that in an all-inclusive style is actually relatively simple. You know, I even had some questions at the beginning of this process thinking, well, how can you enforce that? And there's a number of processes by which we're going to do that, and he'll testify to what those are. From the beginning, everything is going to be incorporated in the price prior to the hotel. The parking itself, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, because it actually deals with the variances that we need here tonight. The first relates to the number of parking spaces. According to Mr. Hurlis's review letter, and I know he'll go over this, but I just wanted to touch on this a little bit, the number of spaces that we need are 135 spaces. What we're proposing are 65 spaces on site, and with the potential for 79 stacked spaces, essentially 14 additional spaces through the act of stacking. And that's the second variance, is actually the use of stacked parking, which is not precisely permitted in Cape May. There's two things I want to touch on with respect to the parking. We're not necessarily contesting the calculation of 135 spaces. I don't want this to turn into an adversarial type of scenario, and God willing it won't. But one of the things I want to make clear to the board is that that 135 number, for lack of a better way of putting it, operates almost under the assumption that the amenities, such as the restaurant and the bar area, are going to be open to the public. So, for example, say those amenities were going to be open to the public. They're not, but let's assume for the sake of argument that they would be. That's the number of spaces that we need, is that 135. The reason why we think we can certainly meet the criteria for the variance related to the parking is because this is a hotel that's going to have 56 sleeping rooms, which means that the 65 spaces we're proposing, and 79 stacked, is more than sufficient to cover the patrons of the hotel, which the parking is going to be limited strictly to those patrons. Nobody off the street is going to be coming onto this site for any reason because of its all-inclusive style. And the other thing I wanted to mention with respect to the stacked parking, Mr. Hurlis's review letter from March 27th does indicate that requires a variance from section 525-49.C1. Mr. Hurlis, I think that might have been a typo, because I think that deals with the number of spaces for dwellings.
C1 is residential, I think.
So I think it's A1? Is it A1?
No, it's going to be C2.
C2, okay.
And 4.
Okay. So the one thing that I'll mention, and again, our engineer and planner will testify this a bit more, is there is a circumstance in Cape May where stacked parking is allowed. That has to deal with Victorian hotels. That's a stated exception. And what's interesting is that if you look at the exception, which I believe is found in section 525-49F, the requirements for any exception for Victorian hotels is that stacked parking must be, if it's going to have stacked parking, valet services must be provided as the exclusive system for parking vehicles and shall be required to delineate the parking spaces by paint lines or markers. Furthermore, each stacked parking space shall be at least 9 feet by 18 feet in dimension. While my client's hotel is not proposed to be Victorian, it will comply with the remaining requirements of stacked parking as it relates to Victorian hotels. And Victorian hotels are defined in the ordinance as hotels with upwards of 100 rooms. So we're dealing with a scenario where we're dealing with about half the rooms where stacked parking is initially anticipated, and we're proposing those stacked parking spaces with the understanding that we're going to comply with the other requirements for stacked parking, which is valet services as the exclusive system for parking, and that the spaces be 9 by 18. The valet services themselves, that's the other thing I wanted to quickly mention to the board, is that there will be no self-parking by the hotel guests on site, which means once you come on site for the beginning of your stay, it's going through valet in order to ensure, to quote the ordinance, to ensure the safe and convenient access during all seasons. So those are the two variances that we're dealing with. There was a third one mentioned in the review letter with respect to the site triangle. However, I think our engineer is going to testify that we intend to comply with that, so there's really going to be no variance there as far as I know, but he can testify that a little bit better. And beyond that, the only other thing I wanted to say as respect to the particulars of the application are we've been in correspondence with the board professionals, or I should say my professionals have been in correspondence with the board professionals about this application since it was initially filed, which was some time ago. A majority of the remainder of the requests of the board planner and engineer we intend to comply with in terms of their suggested conditions and other requirements. Once we go through it, we will be able to say comfortably that a very large percentage of that, I would even say approximately 90 to 95% of that, we intend to comply with, whether it's a condition of approval or what have you. So we want to understand that we're taking the board's concerns, the public's concerns, as much as possible, very, very seriously, and we're not just being flippant with this approach. Beyond that, I did want to just provide final comments. I know I've been talking for a bit, and I know we're looking at a long night, so I'm going to try and keep this brief. I want to make sure, because I'm anticipating certain comments from members of the public, and now I might be assuming here, which I would apologize for, but one of the things that I want to make clear to the board is that the appropriateness, of a hotel on site is not the question that we're facing here tonight. A hotel is an expressly permitted use on site. My client's intention to construct a new hotel on site has been clear for a number of years, as again, we've been before this board a couple of times with respect to 2 prior applications. So one of the things that I just want to make sure the board is clear on, and I'm sure your attorney can correct me if he thinks I'm wrong, is that a hotel is permitted on site. So the question isn't whether or not we can allow a hotel on site. And the mere existence of a variance, because one of the things I'm sure the board might hear is that because they need a variance, obviously they don't comply entirely with the ordinance, therefore you should deny it. I just want to make sure the board is clear that from a legal standpoint, the mere existence of a variance, when viewed in the totality of the circumstances relating to the rest of the application, what conditions the applicant has agreed to, and things like that, does not constitute sufficient grounds for a permitted use to be denied. For a non-permitted use before the zoning board, it's a bit different question. But when you're dealing with an expressly permitted use, something that the city governing body has already deemed appropriate at this location, it's a bit different of a story. In fact, the appellate division has stated in one case, and I thought it was said quite nicely, that, quote, there is nothing inherently evil or misguided about the grant of a variance where it is supported by proper proofs. A variance is a legislatively mandated safety valve from the strict application of a zoning regulation. So we're dealing with 2 potential variances here tonight. The remainder of the hotel that we're proposing complies in its entirety with the ordinance, whether you're talking about setbacks, impervious coverage. In fact, we're actually decreasing the impervious coverage as it exists now versus what will exist if and when we get our approval here tonight. So actually the impervious coverage is going to decrease. And I would also note that I think some of the other departments within the city of Cape May recognize this, because this application was recommended to be approved by the Environmental Commission, the Fire Department, the Police Department, Public Works, and the Shade Tree Commission. All of them recommended approval of this application. Now, the Shade Tree Commission and the Fire Department did have certain conditions, ones we would agree to readily. But I would also note that the Environmental Commission actually, quote, commended us for the use of seaside-tolerant native plants in the landscaping plan. So that's, I think, a good perspective through which we can view this application. Again, we have 4 witnesses here tonight. I've talked more than enough, I believe. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our first witness, Mr. Steve Fenwick, who will be the applicant's architect.
Good evening.
Mr. Fenwick, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
I do too.
Mr. Hurlist, okay, thank you.
Sorry?
So will I. How's that? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You want me to start?
You're good. Steve, you know the drill. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm supposed to, I guess, tell you about my background and qualifications. So Been an architect and planner in the state of New Jersey for an awful long time.
Qualifications are okay. You're good.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Zach?
Keeps it simple.
Okay, I'm very familiar with the site and the project. We've been working on this job for more than 10 years, I think. But just to familiarize everybody, freshen up real quick, this is the existing Jetty Motel, and
So Steve, just for the sake of the record, I believe
It's
you
a-
remarked that A1, right?
you want, oh, it is
Yep.
marked A1, look at that. And I'll just show it to the public. Everybody knows what it looks like. It's a 35-room motel, ground level parking, doesn't meet flood codes or anything like that. So, okay, so this is the proposed building. It's in the, it's a new hotel. It's going to be an exclusive luxury hotel. It's in the C3 zone. Not only it's a permitted use, by being permitted, it's an encouraged use. There's not much else permitted, and hotel motels run up and down Beach Drive. It has 53 units and 56 sleeping rooms. And
Steve, very quickly, just to make that clear, that means there's 53 rooms, but 3 of them have 2 bedrooms. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yes. And that relates to the parking count, which I'll leave to others. And so I have 2 boards here. I'm going to try to share the information so that everybody sees it. I just realized that I'm going to have trouble flipping this baby here.
Can I ask, are these exhibits or are these part of the application?
We're going to make them exhibits, Ms. Keenan.
Okay,
That one's
thank
gonna
you.
be A2, and it's a rendering of the proposed hotel.
Yes.
Want me to mark that A2?
Yeah, please, yes.
So it's a traditional building. It meets the bulk requirements. It meets the setbacks. The ground level is all for parking. It's, below the design flood elevation. As any new building on this site would have to. Thanks, Manny. This is the ground floor and I call it the main level, the first floor plan. And discussion was made, I'll try to keep it short, about the public areas are in purple. I don't think I have to point it out to the public. And the
What document are we pointing to?
I was going to say, we got to,
A3, make it?
this is the ground and first floor plan. It's marked as sheet A1, but we'll mark it as A3.
Is this the ground floor plan?
Ground and first floor plans,
Yeah,
yes.
these were submitted documents, yeah.
I understand,
Yeah, I got it. I marked it A3.
think so.
Okay, and it shows the parking layout, and the engineers and traffic consultants will talk about the parking more than me. You come into the foyer, it's, restricted by flood regs, by the way. You come into the building, you're in the lobby, and you check in. And the access to the building, the rooms, the elevator, that'll be discussed by other experts. The pink areas are the rooms, and the green area is the storage. And the important thing, I guess, is that the amenities, which are the retail, restaurant, bar, fitness, spa, rooftop bar, restrooms, and pantry, are 25% of the total floor area of the building. And that is indicated on this drawing, and it's color-coded as well.
Did you say the purple is storage?
The purple,
The
purple
green
is the
storage.
public areas.
Purple's public area, thanks.
Yes.
And
Yes.
green is storage.
The green is storage, and that, I'm going to turn the page, and you'll see that further illustrated. Thanks, man.
He's got a second set.
Right. Yeah, that was smart.
Okay. So again, the purple areas are amenity spaces, and the pink areas are the rooms. The brown area here is the pool deck. So this is an open area. It opens out to the south and the west, provide a nice environment for the pool deck. The pool is, it's not on the ground. The existing pool is right on the ground. This is not. So it's sequestered in a way by the building itself, and they'll talk about the access.
And Steve, very quickly, this is the second and third floor plan, and we'll mark this A4. All right, this next page are the Beach Avenue and Second Avenue elevations, and we'll mark that A5. Yeah.
I don't know the solution, but I know that the public can't see any of the things you're showing.
It has the same thing on the other.
That's what Manny's,
I can't see what the public's seeing, I'm sorry. I could. Oh, that's what Manny said.
I thought you were going to say what a great idea.
yeah,
It's a great idea.
I couldn't get Vanna.
one day I'll stop being a technophobe and I'll start using the screens, but until then.
They made me do it in Summers Point, and it worked great. Yeah,
It's all good.
because, usually people can't see. Okay, so this drawing is, I don't know how pertinent it is tonight, but it's a refined drawing of the elevation of the buildings. And, it's a first-class luxury building. It's been reviewed and approved carefully by the HPC. It meets the bulk requirements. I'm sure everybody thinks it's big and high compared to what's there, but it's not that big and it's not that high. I don't know. I just drove by a house back there that was like, I don't know how high it was, ginormous. But
Well, Steve, very
it meets
quickly.
the bulk requirements and it meets the setbacks and
Well, Steve, very quickly, I think the height of the hotel and the cupola actually are compliant with the ordinance, correct?
yes, yeah, we meet the bulk requirements.
Okay.
Do we have a document for the HPC that says it's approved?
We must somewhere, but I may have to go back because it was a while ago.
We don't have it.
There's nothing provided in this application.
Well, we
Well,
can get it, right,
What we
man?
can probably do is, I believe there was a conceptual approval some time ago. To the extent any additional approvals are required by the HPC, we would certainly agree to
might
that
have-
as a condition of approval. And the conceptual approval we would also provide that as well. We did
Believe it
receive.
or not, it's only a recent occurrence that we actually got written approvals from the HPC for conceptual approval. So you may have gotten your approval at a time when there wasn't a writing.
Oh, okay.
It was very confusing years ago.
Chris Gillensource became the attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So if Chris wasn't the attorney, there wasn't a written conceptual approval.
Okay, but that's when, obviously, we got conceptual approval, but I know the HPC doesn't give final until you get planning board approval. So again, to the extent any additional approvals are needed by the HPC, we would certainly agree to that as a condition of approval.
Yeah, I probably have something in my file, I'm sure I do. I was, happy to get that approval, obviously. So I'll look.
I sent an email to you, Peter, and I asked you if you had HPC approval, and you said, at this time, the applicant has not received any approvals from the HPC regarding the project. That said, the applicant is aware the final HPC approval will likely be a condition of planning board.
Well, that's, I
was
must have
March
been mistaken.
3rd.
I was aware that conceptual approval was obtained some time ago. It was
Definitely.
before my time, to be quite honest with you, with this application. But once again, to the extent we need it, we would certainly agree to that as a condition of approval.
Yeah, it was definitely obtained because, believe me, I would know if it wasn't. I
You
remember the
understand-
hearing.
You understand if they make any, other than very, very minor changes, you kind of have to come back here because you're seeking final.
Doesn't that necessarily, if it's certainly design changes of what materials we can use, obviously, if they increase the height or things like that, then.
Yeah,
put us in-
materials.
Yeah, exactly. So, and to the extent, though, if it alters the bulk variances in any way or anything, the bulk requirements in any way, yes, we would have to come back. We're aware of that. That's not our intention, hopefully, but we're certainly aware of that requirement.
Yeah, we don't expect, we don't expect any changes, so. Okay, so this is I don't know, is it my A6, I believe?
Yes, and this is it says it's the north and west elevations, building section, and unit plans. And Steve, just for the sake of the record, this is the same design that received conceptual approval from the HPC, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this drawing, it shows the 3 different unit types. There's a 2-bedroom suite, there's a 1-bedroom suite, and there's an efficiency suite. And those are listed on that earlier drawing that showed the unit count and room count. Well, on the next drawing, an important point comes up that your engineer pointed out. So let me just finish with this. This just shows the other 2 sides of the building, and it shows a section through the building at the top of the board. It shows the open pool deck, and basically you got 3 stories over parking. Okay. The next drawing, which I'll mark A7,
For the record, A7 will be the seating chart.
so our original submission showed a different seating plan, and Craig Hurlis correctly indicated to us that the unit count that was included with the old seating plan was not the correct unit count. That had been done by an interior designer of the seating count, and I think he's in California, right, Manny? But he retired, and his office just sent up the plan, and we didn't check the fact that he had changed the units. The architectural plans govern, and this is the seating plan. So
Which sheet is that?
this is A6, and it was submitted, I think, like 2 weeks ago or something.
Are we on A7? I'm sorry.
Who prepared that plan? Is that your plan, Mr. Fenwick?
Yes. Craig, it's essentially the same seating areas as the prior submission, but the prior submission included the whole building, and the designers had, why am I not surprised, inadvertently changed the arrangement of some of the units. So, inappropriately. The units are shown on the architectural plans govern, they never changed, but we missed that when we submitted.
And Steve, if you can,
Yes.
Mr. James, before you go any further, everybody's scrambling. Let's make sure everybody's looking at the same document, and we make clear what document we're working off of, because I don't know that anybody has the right, and my engineer looks like he
I
doesn't
don't
have anything.
think,
in front
I
of
don't
him.
think that is not part of the package, the most recent package that the board has. And that's going to lead to confusion.
well, I think what we can probably do, I think, to make it, is Steve, why don't you just kind of take them through it?
Okay.
You know, just kind of
Well,
piece by piece.
Before you do that,
Okay, fair enough.
so there was a seating plan that was recently submitted March 24th, 2025, that I reviewed as part of my review memo, my most recent review memo. That plan was prepared by Design Continuum Incorporated.
Right, that plan is void.
Okay.
Void, null and void.
Is there a difference in the seats that are on this versus what's on your plan?
You know, I'm not sure, Craig. I'm not totally sure. There's the same number of seats. I think it may be different at the bar. I don't remember. I can pull it out and check right now. We have 29 at the bar, 12 at the outdoor patio tables, for a total of 41 at the pool area.
That's the one.
Just for the record, the thing you've been referencing, you're calling A6, but it's A7 as we've marked it.
No, it's A7.
Yes, it's our drawing A6, marked A7. It's called Seating Plans, Concept Design Seating Plans, and it's dated 3/27/25.
All right, so we want to put
We
away
did
the-
send it in. I don't know if Karen got it. You never got it, Karen? Right, you guys made me crazy getting it in there.
No, what I think we can do then is to again, take them through what we're looking at now.
Okay.
And we can kind of just,
To walk up and look at it. I don't want to have you talking to me and I can't even see it.
If
I was
that's,
hoping that you would tell me that the seating plan on the most recent
Let me
plan
check.
that was submitted, that was valid for the seating plan. The other areas do not match up with Mr. Fenwick's plans, and that's what the issue that I raised in my report. So like, there were different unit counts on the entire floor in those, on the seating plans that I raised an issue with.
So you're sure that that up there isn't what's here?
No, it's not.
It's not that?
No.
It's dated differently.
This is incorrect. Only the seating is what
Steve, hold up, where's his?
This is old. This is old.
Make sure you speak into the
I did verify that.
Can I ask a question? We don't know yet. Let me see if I have this straight. The plan that we've been sent to study was dated March the 18th, 2025, from Design Continuum Incorporated. Now you're telling us there's another seating plan that was March 25th,
I believe it was dated March 27th.
27th?
And that's what we have here marked.
And
as
we don't
the
have
second.
that.
Well, again, it's,
It was my understanding that it was brought in, but Karen says she never received it. And that would have been about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if it was FedExed or hand-delivered. I don't really handle that stuff in the office. We went between myself and the attorney's office.
Regardless, at this point in time, for us to sit here and try and project our eyes to see that is impossible. So if you want to, from my perspective, if you want to continue with this, I want to come up there and look at it.
Okay.
Well, I would,
Mr. Fenwick, part of the difficulty is if you look over Mr. Crowley's paperwork,
Right.
it's got, like hours, and has pen marks all over that, trying to understand it and do it, and now he's looking at you like, I need another, like, 2 hours over whatever it is you're gonna have me do, because he does look at it. But
I appreciate
I can
that,
see that
and I
coming,
respect that. I can try to explain it quickly and then come back and show it to you. How about that? I can actually put the...
I don't think that's going to work.
I have no
I'll
objection.
take a 5-minute break or 10-minute break. Everybody can, because there's 2 copies of it, so we'll
Yeah,
put one up
yeah.
there, one for
That's-
us and one for the public, and the board can look at it, and everyone can take 10 minutes and look at it.
And
then
I
the
would
board will decide
advise
if
your,
they're comfortable with that or
your
not.
team should take a look at this seating plan and see what changed.
Yeah,
And let us know what changed
that's a
on that
good
plan.
idea.
Can I borrow that, Craig?
All
Because
right, we'll
I
take a
can't
10-minute
find
break.
my file
The
copy.
board, let's look at our side. of
Probably
it.
on some of
The
these
public
guys.
can look at your side. if you want.
I would ask the board not to discuss it with each other while you're off the record. Just look at it and... The board
we get
can
on-
discuss it while the record's closed, so just
Can-
look at it and talk to yourself.
Can we get all microphones off, please?
Board members, please turn your mics off, please.
That's what I was hoping you would tell us.
I'm sorry, I didn't have this to say that.
Well, just go verify that, and we can end this confusion right now and say that is
Okay.
valid.
You know what? I think it's the same. So I think it's the same, so if I can just verify it.
This looks the same, but that's not on the drawing that we have.
What's not? That's,
This is not on it.
yes, it is. This is your drawing that you got. So it says 29, and then it says 12. So over here, 12, and 41 total. So it is the same. Yes, thank God. It's the same. Oh, they made me crazy to get it in here 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago. I know. I don't know what happened. Anyway, and then this plan, I'm sorry, this one. This, no. Oh, it's, they're both the same drawing. Except this is 2 drawings.
Make that clear then.
You ready to go again? Mayor, you ready? All right, everybody, can we sit down now? We'll get started again, please.
Yes.
Luckily, I can't lose any more hair.
Sorry.
It's gone.
All right, everybody, can we have some silence and we'll get started again? Everybody turn your mics on up front.
Okay, sorry for this confusion. I'd like to try to clarify this as simply as possible. The plans that were in your packet, they were labeled Design Continuum Incorporated. They are correct as to the seating, but they are incorrect as to the units. So the seating plans are the same, and the architectural plans govern the actual number and arrangement of units. So we're actually, I wasn't sure that they were the same, but I just checked Craig's plans, and the seating is the seating. I know that was an important point that Craig made in our application, and I didn't expect this to happen, but because we did, in my mind, made a hurried submission to the board. There was some period of time, and somehow it fell through the cracks.
Very quickly, Steve, I just want to make sure that the board understood what you just said. If they have any follow-up questions, Craig, if you have any follow-up questions, I just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands what happened and what governs. So I just want to,
What the notes, my notes reflect, which usually gets turned into some part of the resolution.
Sure.
So, does Mr. Hurlis reviewed the design continuum plan dated March 18, 2025? This plan is actually the same as A7, except the units are different. Therefore, for the seating, the board may rely upon the March 18, 2025 plan they reviewed.
perfect.
Right?
Yeah, and that's called out as furniture layout, so that's which we should only rely on it for. And so the answer that they gave is the answer that I was hoping, that the architectural plans that we've been relying on all this time govern with regards to the room count and the room configurations and the areas, which is very important because
Correct.
there is a 25% maximum percentage of the building that can be dedicated to the accessory uses on site. The architectural plans have been reviewed and show that they are right up against that 25% maximum. So,
But you're comfortable with my two-sentence summary of the last 20 minutes?
yes.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, Craig, you said first floor furniture layout, it also should include the third floor furniture layout.
Right, they gave us two sheets. It's the
Right.
first and the third. There's no seating on the second floor. That's
right.
why I was.
So the seating issue is covered on these two sheets?
Yes, we're
First and
relying
third
on
floor.
as part of their testimony.
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct?
Yes.
And these two sheets is the March 18th, 2025 plan.
Right.
I think that concludes my testimony, unless you have anything more for me to say.
No, I
Anybody
think,
has any questions?
unless the board has any further questions for Mr. Fenwick, we'll turn it over to our traffic engineer. Seeing none? Steve, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to mark the March 18th plan A8 just because I'm mentioning it in here, so let's just,
Do you want to do A8 and A9 just for both sheets?
I thought it's not a two-sheet document, it's two different things?
No, it's a two-sheet document, but if you want to keep it as
Let's
one.
mark it A8.
Okay, that's fine. A8 it is.
Before the architect leaves, we are going to hear from your witnesses about how these numbers were calculated?
Yes, our engineer and planner is going to be testifying last, and he's going to try and kind of bring it all home
All
and
right.
bring it all together, essentially batting cleanup.
Okay.
And if you have any questions of me later, I'm sure I'll be available, you know.
Yes, Steve, please don't leave. I get why you might want to, but please don't. All right, Dave, you know the drill. Introduce yourself, discuss your qualifications.
So you, swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Dave Shropshire, S-H-R-O-P, S-H-I-R-E, professional engineer, professional planner in the state of New Jersey, traffic engineering, transportation planning. That's what our expertise is. I appear before this board and over 200 throughout the state of New Jersey and been qualified as
You're
an
fine,
expert.
you're fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take it away.
Okay. We prepared a parking assessment.
Could you just move that mic a little closer, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
We prepared a parking assessment dated March 19th, 2025, to evaluate this. And I'll try to briefly go over what is, I guess, the important components of this. The requirement, which has already been stated, but I'll restate it, for the 56 bedrooms would be 65 spaces. The additional requirement for employees would bring it up to a requirement of 75 spaces. So the overall requirement on the site for those two components will be 75. When we add on the restaurant bar seating to that, that adds 60 more spaces to the overall requirement. So that's almost half of what is required. Brings it up to 135. And a key component to my assessment and my evaluation of this is the management component that says this restaurant bar seating is an amenity and for hotel guests only. So from a traffic standpoint, from the parking standpoint, it would be inconsistent to consider those demands together as independent uses on the site because they are integrated, and that's going to be a dictate of how this hotel operates.
Mr. Trump, can I just pause you for a second? I may be wrong about this, but what I wrote down, what he said, was that the 56 bedrooms require 65 spaces. I'm not sure that that's right. So I think you kind of you use the right numbers, but they got in the wrong places. I think it's 56 requires 56.
Yeah.
Then there's 19 employees, and that's the 75,
The
right?
parking requirement is based on the number of sleeping rooms. So
So
there's,
that's 56.
so we don't want to talk about units because there are a couple of two-bedroom units. There's 56 sleeping rooms that require 56 parking.
And he said 65.
Yeah.
And I apologize.
Can you do that again? Because it
Sure.
went in, and it went in wrong, and it's the basis of everything we're going to do for the next hour. so.
And I apologize
Okay.
because your ordinance, when it comes to taking a look at the bedrooms or actually sleeping beds as kind of an independent from the units, all of our data basically is compiled on unit counts as opposed to bedrooms. So when you have a door into a unit, but there's two bedrooms in there, that's,
That wasn't the problem. You said there's 56 bedrooms across 65. and
No, that-
so Just go slower.
Yeah, I will.
There's 51 bedrooms,
no,
there's 50 single-bedroom
Single-bedroom.
units, and then there are 3 two-bedroom units. That comes to 56.
which would require 56 spaces.
That's right, okay.
And there's 19 employees
Per the largest shift,
per the
correct?
largest shift, which is the other requirement, and that would bring the total up to 75 required spaces.
Essentially 56 plus 19, 75.
And then add 60 on top of that if we look at the restaurant bar seating, completely independent of what is being proposed as part of an amenity for this and for hotel guests only. So that forms the requirement. When we looked at what we generally look at is the Institute of Transportation Engineers parking generation manual to try and identify what we think the projected demand would be for this style hotel. I'll read you what the land use says for this type of hotel. I typically don't do this, but I just want to make sure the record's clear. And under the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual, the description of the hotel is as follows. A hotel is a place of lodging that provides sleeping accommodations and supporting facilities such as a full-service restaurant, concierge service, valet parking, cocktail lounge, meeting rooms, banquet room, and convention facilities. A hotel typically provides a swimming pool or another recreational facility, such as a fitness room. So you've already heard Mr. Fenwick describe it. That's what this is, based on ITE definitions. It fits. When we look at what the ITE data says, the 85th percentile parking demand for this type of facility is 0.98 spaces or vehicles per room. So if we do the math on the per room basis, based on ITE, the ratio that we have provided on site is 1.23 spaces per room. So we far exceed what ITE would say the parking demand is going to be for the exact definition of what this hotel use is.
And Dave, very quickly, just so the board is clear, can you take them through what ITE is, how they come up with those numbers, and then just kind of go from there?
ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, is our professional society to where we would do a parking survey and we would provide that information to the Institute and they would compile it in terms of trip generation, because there's a trip generation manual that I know I've testified before this board related to that. And they also have a parking generation manual. So that data comes from professionals like us, and some of the data that we provide actually have provided form the basis for the data that I'm giving you.
And it's fairly standard to rely on that data in order to generate the reports such as yours, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Question. On page 3 of 4, this is what you're talking about, that first full paragraph. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it seems to me, as I read that paragraph, you're basing your calculations on the number of rooms that are being occupied or projected to be occupied, which then generates the need for a parking space. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Why aren't you also factoring in the employees' parking spaces?
Because under the ITE data, they don't independently look at employees independent of
But
the
we
rooms.
are.
No, I understand that that's what your requirement is, but what we're trying to do is determine what the demand will be for those parking spaces. And this data is based on a per room basis for everything that's associated with a hotel, including employees.
You lost me.
Let him finish, though.
Well, okay. You can finish, but I still want to go back to this paragraph because I still don't see how you've factored in employees, if nothing in that
No,
paragraph.
I'm not factoring in employees.
Well-
The Institute of Transportation Engineers would take a hotel like this, we would do a parking survey. It's not split up by anything other than rooms. So whatever that demand is, we give that to the Institute, and they do the division based on number of rooms.
So we have to take that, and then we have to calculate the impact of our ordinances on parking requirements for employees and come up with a combined number of parking spaces.
That's how your ordinance comes up with a requirement for parking.
All right.
I'm trying to tell you what the demand would be
All right.
for those parking spaces.
Okay.
So that, and ironically, this is always like a big rub, even in our office, to the definition of supply versus the definition of demand. Your ordinance requires supply. I'm trying to tell you what is going to be in those parking spaces,
All right.
so based on the data.
Okay.
Just one more question on that paragraph, though, but you don't have any benchmark. This says a hotel. It doesn't say an all-inclusive resort. It doesn't say how many seats are in the restaurant, bar, lounge, anything.
That's correct.
So, if you're adding in all of those accommodations in this hotel, you're doubling up the number of parking spaces based on the design of a 162-seat restaurant.
Actually, that's not true based on the data that is compiled by the Institute. It would be, but I read you that paragraph that
Right.
has all the amenities, and actually very consistent amenities that this hotel is proposing. And with those amenities, that ratio is what the demand will be.
And in this condition, there's never any public parking available. So have you ever been to a hotel where there's not public parking also available? You come for dinner, or you come for a meeting place, or a banquet, or a wedding?
Well, in
Because
this,
the all-inclusive is really what's driving your definition of how this property will be managed,
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, so what I'm saying to you is this isn't defining an all-inclusive hotel. So you're kind of comparing, in my opinion, apples and oranges here, number one. And number two, I've never been to a hotel, quote-unquote, that does not have some public parking accommodation because people are coming from the outside, right? So You're you're saying that this is what we're supposed to benchmark against, and I'm saying it's not the same definition of what you're proposing for the use of this property.
I can read the definition again.
Oh, no, I have it right here in front of me.
The
I can read
definition
it.
is very clear
Okay,
that that's
all right.
exactly what this is.
Okay, all right.
And one thing I do want to make clear to the board is that in this particular case, nope, there will be no public interaction. That's what it's quite literally designed to be.
Okay, we're going to hear testimony on that, correct?
Yes, from two separate people, and Mr. Shropshire, and it's going to be exclusive across the board that there's going to be no public interaction at this restaurant. Excuse me, at this hotel.
All right, so, all right, when we get to that.
Thank you, sure.
Right. So that's the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which we typically rely on, would say, we have enough parking, and there's justification for the parking variance that were granted. I want to go back to the supply side of things.
Dave, very quickly, because I just want to make sure the record is clear, because I think your question was a very good question. Essentially what you're saying, and I want to make sure the public is clear on this as well, when the ITE defines hotel, it defines it as including many of the amenities that we're proposing here tonight, correct?
That's correct.
And in incorporating the peak demand at 0.98 per room, as opposed to the 1.23 that we're offering, that is meant to incorporate, in addition to, even though it's calculated per room, it's meant to incorporate and include the amenities for the patrons of those rooms. Is that
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'll make one other note. Because the Institute of Transportation Engineers comes up with new editions of the parking manual, this project's been going on long enough that we actually have a new edition, the 6th edition that I utilized for this. I actually looked back at the 5th edition because I was concerned when I saw that 85th percentile at 0.98 spaces per room, because I recalled that the demand was higher in a previous edition. And that is correct, it was higher. And I'm thinking, well, the reason that it would actually be lower is the advent of Uber and things that would actually decrease the parking demand associated with this type of facility. So the actual demand rate has come down in the latest data that has been put together with ITE.
If I may on that, I think when I hear valet parking, cocktail lounge, meeting rooms, banquet room, convention facilities, that doesn't really sound like a Cape May hotel necessarily. I mean, I think any study is going to vary very much based on, is this a roadside hotel or is this a downtown New York City hotel?
Well,
you know, in a New York City hotel, you're going to have cabs, subway, you know, all of those.
I will try to answer that question.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Because the next section in the report deals with a survey that we did a while ago at the existing Jetty Hotel, or motel. And what we found there was a parking demand, on-site parking demand of 27 parking spaces when there was 30 occupied rooms. That ratio is 0.9. It's about the same. I looked at other data that we've done for another hotel along Beach Avenue over time from 2014, 15, 19. We did several surveys up until 2023. All of those parking ratios are right around 1 space per room, which would include everything that's being generated by the hotel room and all the staffing. So
Dave, do you recall which hotel that was?
it was the Lemire was
Okay.
the one that over and over again came up with the same, basically the same on-site parking demand. So anyway, to me, that's another justification that this data looks pretty good for this type of hotel in this location, which I think might address the concern that you have that this might be a different animal than the survey data that was contained in the Institute of Transportation Engineers data. So, okay, with all of that said, we do have 65 spaces on site. However, we're proposing a valet operation. The valet operation would add 14 additional spaces to this stacked parking, which I believe we need a variance for, but we do meet the criteria as was read earlier with regard to how that is designed. And you've heard that this is going to be a valet all-inclusive hotel. So another component of this that's critical, not only to have the restaurant bar seating be hotel only, is having this valet operation. And again, this is becoming more and more standard with hotels that we do analyses for. So with that given, actually the parking supply that we're providing is 79 parking spaces with a operational and efficient valet system, which actually exceeds your ordinance requirements for the hotel with the employees, which would be 75 spaces. On top of that, because the Jetty Motel today has back-out parking on both Second and on Beach, we're going to we're going to create at least 6 more parking spaces on the street. That would be for public parking, not necessarily related to any demands associated with the hotel, but anybody who wants to park in this area. I did take a run out tonight to take a look at what the county's done along Beach over the recent time. I guess there's some improvements going on there right now.
Actually, the city.
Oh, the city's doing this, the improvements? Well, it seems like this is one of the lone half blocks that doesn't have any on-street parking on Beach. And I'm not sure why that couldn't be incorporated if that's what the city wanted to do. So there might be the opportunity to get actually more on-street parking for the public, not associated with this hotel, just through the elimination of the back-out parking on Beach. We definitely will get it on Second because of the elimination of the back-out parking on Second. From a traffic safety perspective, it's way, way better to have, and I think your own ordinances recognize this, to have a structured parking that has a designated entry, a designated exit, and not backing out onto a city street, or it's just something that's trying to get removed, and this will remove a substantial amount of back-out parking. So from a safety perspective, that's a benefit that's going to be created through this. So I think all of that taken together, and you'll hear planning testimony, but from my perspective, from a traffic perspective, I think the parking variance has justification. I don't think it's going to be any detriment to the public good with regard to this parking variance. I don't think there's any impairment to your planning ordinance or your master plan with this parking variance that's being suggested. And there's a possibility that there's actually going to be more public parking added to the overall system. Critical to the entire situation is the management plan that has the restaurant bar seating for hotel guests only, and having an effective valet system for the parking, which is able to be done based on the design.
May I ask a question with regard to your parking survey? I'm curious as to why you chose a period of 2 weeks after the state lifted the COVID ban for people to be able to come and stay in hotels. That ban was lifted, and for the first time around June 26, hotels in the city were able to take in guests. And your parking survey is dated July 30th of that, July 11th. Seems a rather odd time to base your argument on.
Well, I'm actually not basing my argument on that because we don't need that public parking. However, we provided that data when it looked like we may need public parking for.
But you do understand that there's a difference even between the two, the property at that end of town versus Lemire. If you understand that neighborhood at that end of town in East, it's not a residential neighborhood in the same context and concentration as it is down at the Jetty Hotel.
Understood.
So the utilization, especially just using that as sort of a barometer and looking at it and comparing those two properties, again, very different just from one end of town to the other.
Well, actually, just so I can just respond to that, all we're looking at is parking demand for a Hotel Lemire, which has 162 rooms at the point we did our surveys with, I think it was a 140-seat restaurant that was open to the public. And the on-street parking
Is more than ample at that
on-site
end of the
parking.
block, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I gave you the demand.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it was relative data, supports the ITE data, supports the data we got from the Jetty. And I just want to, the idea of the surveys that were done in 2020, it was a different application when we did that. I could have neglected to put that in the report, but since there was data related to the on-street parking conditions in the whole area, I thought I would add that. With regard to the actual surveys that we did of the on-site parking for Jetty. We made sure that we counted how many spaces were occupied and also knew the amount of rooms that were occupied so we could get a
And that was
good
in
ratio.
2020?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's sort of what I'm saying. That's not, I don't consider that period of time to be a real indication of business in Cape May and what July 11th week looks like in Cape May in 2024 or 2025.
Well, I could have just
You could have,
skip
yeah.
skip
but
that whole
put
thing
it
because
in,
we're not
so
relying
that's
on
why
that parking.
It's a little confusing to me, so, thank you.
What we could potentially do, and I guess, I mean, this sometimes will happen, and this is more of a suggestion than it is a recommendation. There are sometimes, and as a condition of approval, what boards will require, and it's up to the boards, you know, it's at their, if it pleases them to do so, is a follow-up study to confirm the findings of the survey as found in 2020, to provide the board with an added level of comfort that the .98 per room peak parking demand that was reflected in 2020, that seems to be consistent in Lemire, is still consistent and to this day. So again, if the board would like an added layer of comfort there, we can certainly provide an additional parking survey as a condition of approval in relation to this application. That's something we'd certainly be willing to do.
Can you
Just-
include the weather when you do that?
What do you mean
Include
include?
the weather when you do
Yeah,
that?
you know, the interesting thing was with Lemire, we did it over 3 weekends so that we made sure that we did not get overcome by a weather event. So I thought we got really good data there.
I was hoping it would be during a hurricane and just, you know, but, you know, it's,
So, yeah, we will, when we do traffic counts, when we do parking counts, we make sure that we're getting the peak of the peak, or at least we make our best attempt.
and one of the things, Dave, I just want to make sure the record was clear. When you brought up Lemire, you weren't necessarily comparing what we're doing with Lemire in terms of where it's located or the hotel design itself. It was
No.
really just in the context of a hotel in Cape May, consistent with your study on this property from 2020 in Lemire. The peak parking demand tends to be about .98 or .9 per room.
Yeah, maybe the best way that I can state it is if we provided the data from Jetty from 2020 and Lemire from many years, it would fit right into the ITE data.
Okay.
But, however, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me that you haven't done a study that captures what's happened at the Cove in the last 5 years in terms of usage, beach usage, surfers, families. The entire complex at the Cove is materially different than it was 5 years ago.
Because we don't need that public parking.
Yeah, perfect. That's kind of, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but that was when we filed an application in 2021, what we proposed was a very similar application, but we said the amenities were going to be open to the public, and obviously there was considerable pushback, and that application was denied. At that time, we were certainly reliant on the public parking in order to cover the variance aspect. What we're saying here is that what we designed in this particular application is designed to actually contend with that by removing the need of public parking altogether for our operation, and in addition, add at least 6 spaces on Second Avenue by removing the backout parking that currently exists. So not only will 0 patrons of this hotel be using public parking, but there will be 6 additional spaces for the public to use during peak hours. And that's just on Second Avenue with the removal of backout parking. As Mr. Shropshire mentioned, we're going to be removing the backout parking on Beach Avenue as well, and of course, we would welcome additional spaces there as well.
So the parking spaces that you're going to, maybe this is an operational question for one of your other witnesses. Sure. The spaces on Second Avenue, then, you're saying they're open to the public. They're public parking spaces. There'll be meters on them. There's meters everywhere else down there. And yet the design of the building, that's the front entrance to the building, and there's going to be valet parking only, which means you're going to be stacking cars up along that side for your 2 valet people to get to them. I don't know if that's an operational question or...
Actually, the way the parking is designed, they enter right in and can go all the way down to the end aisle, and there's enough room there for 6 or so cars, which would be way more than would be anticipated to be there at any one time for the valet service. So there's distance within the building itself to actually have those cars off the street. There's no need for reliance.
So there
on
won't be
anything
a
on the street.
valet stack on the street?
No, no need.
That's something we would want to write into this plan if we ever did it, because otherwise, if you don't do it, those aren't public spaces.
Correct.
We would agree to that.
Yep.
If you want to make that an express condition, that there's no stacked parking on.
I don't
perfectly fine.
disbelieve you, I just want to see it in writing.
I get it. Trust but verify. I understand. I'm an attorney by trade. That's all we have to do every day, all day.
And those spaces would be metered, the ones that are on street also. So, I assume they would be consistent with all the rest of what happens on beach.
And Dave, I think you and I both saw that there was some concern from certain members of the public that there was a concern that actually 70 on-street spaces needed to be provided. Can you just maybe provide some clarity there?
No, if we're going with the parking requirement for the rooms and the employees under the ordinance of the city, that's 75 spaces, and we have valet parking for 79. So in effect, we meet the requirement. We more than meet the anticipated demands from the surveys that we've done and from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So there's no need for any public parking for any of this. And again, the key thing here is the integration of the restaurant bar seats as an amenity for hotel guests only and valet operation. That's the critical components of this.
And that's a perfect segue, I think, into our, unless Mr. Hurlis has
I just wanted to clear something up, and I think Dennis asked the question, and the mayor sort of asked a similar question, but the ITE is an accepted engineering manual that we use to estimate parking. And the way the IT captures this data is they do surveys all over the country at various sized hotels, and they plot the data based on the number of parking spaces versus the number of hotel units. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
So they plot this data, and they come up with percentiles that we can best guess what's the parking demand going to be for a specific hotel that has X amount of units. So we can plot that and kind of come up with an estimate. Now, they may not, those estimates are taken all over the country and may not capture localized summer beach peak hotel rates, but now Mr. Shropshire is using some data that he's done at the Lemaire. Now, we recognize that the Lemaire neighborhood is not the same as where this proposed application is. Where your proposal is, has certainly more parking constraints than what the Lemaire does, and I think you recognize that. But I think their argument and their justification for this parking variance hinges on whether their operational plan functions. So I think that's where you should be concerned with. So I hope I answered everyone's questions with regards to the ITE.
That's why
it's not a definitive number that's set in stone. It is an average of things taken all over the country and may not represent localized conditions. So
And the questions are going to come down when we discuss operation.
okay, thank you.
And with that note, we'll bring up our operations manager, Mr. Mike Marshall. Yep, absolutely, whichever.
Go ahead. Do you want
Well, I was,
qualifications? Oh, you gonna-
just, we want to swear him in, yeah.
And then I just like to be particular about what expertise we're putting him in for, okay? 'Cause it's not typical.
Hotel operation and management.
Sir, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Now your qualifications, because everybody wants to hear what you're going to say.
Yeah,
so.
okay. My name is Mike Marshall. I currently live in Ocean City, Maryland. I'm the CEO of TPG Hotels and Resorts. We manage approximately 140 hotels in 30 different states. A lot of them are independent boutique type of properties like this hotel. In fact, we have a division called the Intera Collection. I don't know if you shared that deck with them or not.
No, that wasn't part of the application.
Okay, so I know it's not part of the application, but I've been in the hotel business since I was 15 years old. I started as a dishwasher at the Holiday Inn in Salisbury, Maryland. My father at the time was starting a hotel management company, which became Marshall Management Hotels and Resorts. I took that over from him, and I bought him out in 2012. I sold my company, Marshall Hotels and Resorts, to TPG Hotels and Resorts 3 years ago. So, but I was retained as a CEO of the company. So I've been managing multiple properties. I mean, I've probably been involved in well over 400 different properties over the course of my career. Everything from, again, as a dishwasher to a general manager to a director of operations to just building a company. When I sold my company, I had 75 hotels that I sold to the management of, to TPG. We continue to grow and look at different projects. I'm flying to Indianapolis tomorrow to look at a hotel in downtown Indianapolis. I mean, this is all I do.
Can you say how many of the hotels you're involved with are all-inclusive as opposed to open to the public?
Just a handful. One of them would be on Block Island up in Rhode Island, where you have to specifically take a ferry to get over there and whatnot. So it's a handful. But as I'll try to explain, how many people have been on a cruise ship?
Well, hold up, real quick. Let's just, unless the board has any further questions, unless there's anything you'd kind of want to go through a little bit more, I would just offer him as an expert in the field of hotel
Board have any
management and
questions for the
operations.
Expert in the hotel operations?
And management.
Okay.
Currently, TPG manages the Inn at Cape May. We, at one point, when we were Marshall Hotels, we managed the Jetty also for a couple of years. So, I mean, I remember coming up here over 20 years ago to meet with the board of directors of the Marquis de Lafayette. So I've been in and out of Cape May for many years. We've had hotels throughout the state of New Jersey over that time as well.
I'm okay with the witness. Does the board have any other questions?
Can I just ask, what's the management company again? K?
TPG.
T as in Tom?
Tom. P as in Peter.
G as in goat.
Yes.
Got it.
Very good. Go ahead.
Go.
No, we didn't.
Just for qualifications, that's all. Let them speak.
So anyway, I wanted to ask who's been on a cruise ship. All right, when you make a reservation for a cruise line, whether you go through a travel agent or through them directly, you pay in advance. When you arrive at the cruise ship, they hand you a set of keys or a key fob to get in. That's your passport to get through the ship. And once you have that, that's how you charge everything. They typically ask you to provide a credit card for any incidentals, which might be an extra drink at the bar, or to use at the gift shop, or the spa, or what have you. This is the same concept. We'll know in advance who's coming. We're going to know what their meals or choices are going to be. They're going to pull up to the front. They've already paid. Their key fob, or we could use an RFD key card, as the ability to get in and out of not only the building, but their guest room. So they're handed that when they check in. They'll probably be asked for another form, like a credit card for any incidentals. That card, or that fob, will be timed. Once you're supposed to check out, it no longer works. So it's only while you're on property that you've paid to be on property will that card work. And again, we'll know in advance what your meal choices are. Everything is, it's all included. You don't have to worry about anything. You just make your reservation, pay in advance, check in, drop your car off, valet will take it downstairs, and then you enjoy your stay. Our job as management is to make sure that that stay is as enjoyable as possible, that the experience at the hotel and in Cape May is something that they'll want to go home and tell all their friends about. Because in our industry, the best word of advertising is word of mouth. Even though my daughter will say it's social media, but that's another story altogether. But the whole concept is very simple. There's nobody that's going to be allowed to come in from outside. You have to be a registered guest to be on property. You have to be a registered guest to use the pool facilities, or the exercise room, or again, we'll be serving breakfast, we'll be serving dinner. Lunch is not included because we know people are going to be at the beach or they're going to be wandering around town. We want them to make use of all the other amenities the city of Cape May has to offer. So we're encouraging them to go off-site to wander around the town and to spend money. And again, that's part of the overall experience. We are offering something that nobody, as a guest, you don't have to worry about anything. You just have to worry about having a good time. We're going to offer a clean, comfortable stay. The facilities are magnificent. The interior design will be fantastic. The beds will be top-notch. The amenities, as in the soap and the shampoos and whatnot, will be top-notch. This is going to be as close to a luxury experience as you can get. It will not be Five Diamond in that we're not going to have valet shoe service that they drop off at the door. We're not going to offer 24/7 room service. I mean, there are certain limitations that we'll have because it's a seasonal property. And we know that we have a certain amount of time to maximize the profitability of the revenue of the hotel. And again, I've been in seasonal properties my entire life. We know how to maximize, but we also know how to make sure the guest is having a great time so they want to come back, so that they go back home and tell their friends about it. And I know that one of the concerns was number of employees, and I can list the number of employees we have on the busiest day. I mean, it starts with the front desk clerk, 4 in housekeeping, 3 in the front of the restaurant, 3 in the back of the restaurant.
Mike?
Yep.
I'm gonna say slow down on this one only
Okay.
because I think this is kind of very important information.
I get a
in
little
terms of
excited.
The number of employees we're gonna have.
I'm sorry. I'm not disputing that you're going to need 19 people. I would say that it seems a little light from running an operation of that
Actually,
size. Okay.
if I need 19, I guarantee I'm only going to have 17
Okay,
show up.
so here's more my concern. What is your marketing analysis that suggests an all-inclusive resort in Cape May is going to be successful? What is your price point? This town is known for its restaurants. To be able to say you're offering all-inclusive and they're going to pay for breakfast and dinner, they're not leaving to eat and accommodations at any of the other restaurants in town. Most people come here and want to go out. They list, they immediately call. I have, some inkling of hospitality business. The first thing they call about is, what are the restaurants that are open? Do I get reservations? Where do I get them from? We'll look for you for recommendations, et cetera. So I'm just curious, you talked about Block Island. You're on an island. You're on a remote island. There's not a lot of offerings for other amenities there. I can see that with an all-inclusive works there. I've been to many all-inclusives in my life. It just doesn't resonate to me, so I'm wondering what your marketing analysis is that to suggest. And here's the reason I'm going in this direction is because if you're not successful, what are you going to do with a 162-seat restaurant? Okay.
Okay. I mean, that's fair.
All right.
But I will also say that we will offer the ability to eat off-site. We'll offer a credit. If they don't want to have their dinner or they don't want to have their breakfast, we will give them a credit so that they do have the ability to go off-site. But we want them to, again, we want them to enjoy, it's a cruise line type of feel where you're.
But on a cruise ship, you have nowhere else to go to get a meal. You understand?
Well, that's not, that's actually, that's true and it's not true. Because if you go on a lot of these cruise ships now, they offer and better dining options where you can pay more to sit in the top house restaurant and whatnot. But there will be the ability that if they say, listen, I only want to have breakfast every day, we can factor that into the meal count and offer the credit that way. Now, it will be more advantageous for them to want to do that because when we know how many people we're serving, I know exactly how much food to buy. I have no waste. So I'm a lot more efficient that way.
And Mike, I think one of the other ideas that was floated around, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, was the idea of separate kind of packages in terms of if people would prefer to eat off-site, they could pay a lower rate in terms of, because they're not actually, it kind of varies based on what the guest wants. Is that correct?
There will be options, but the options will be priced to try to push them to do as much on property as possible, because, it's a Disney concept. They don't want you leaving their
No, and
resort with
I'm
any
only
money
pushing
left in
this
your
point
pocket.
because of not necessarily what you're doing on day one. It's what you're doing on year 3, when that model is not successful in this market. That's the reason I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because I'm not looking just to approve this application or not approve it based on what you're doing the day you open. This is a long-term from my perspective. So you say you're only going to need X amount of parking day one. But if your model needs to change, because that's the only way you can have an ROI, which we all know that in hotels, it's food and alcohol is what drives the bottom line.
Guest rooms.
Okay, to a certain extent, but yeah, anyway.
I make a much larger percentage of profit on the guest rooms.
Just very quickly, though, I think there was a question there, and I just want to,
No, the question is, I don't know that you can answer it. We'll get to the parking and the conditions of the parking for the facility that you're going to open. My questions are just around the feasibility of that in the long term. And maybe that's not appropriate for this board. But if I'm looking at this, I want to ensure that what I approve or if I approve this, that's the conditions in which this operates
That's-
indefinitely.
I thought I understood
Yeah.
that. So if I can perhaps provide some comfort. So I think what you're kind of saying is, listen, let's assume for the sake of argument, now, I'm not necessarily conceding this point, but let's hypothetically, this model, for whatever reason, is not as successful in Cape May because, like you said, all-inclusive versus people going out and experiencing Cape May, which is the draw, largely. If the model is unsuccessful and you switch for some reason, the variances are being granted based on the conditions that the hotel amenities are limited to guests. And if you need to change that for whatever reason, how am I to know, what's to stop you from using the parking and opening it to the public and things like that? One thing I can confidently say, and I'm sure Mr. King will agree with me here, and if not, of course, you can correct me, Rich. And I've been a board attorney myself, so I understand how this portion of it works. What is agreed to tonight, if the board decides to approve this, whatever conditions are agreed to tonight are conditions that will bind the property and run with the land. To the extent that the model has to change at some point in the future, for whatever reason, and that in any way affects the approval here tonight, meaning we want to open something to the public, we cannot do so legally without coming back before this board in any fashion. That's why you have a resolution. That's why you agree to certain conditions. So any change to that degree would inevitably and without question involve a reappearance before this board, asking for an amended site plan or a new site plan, however it's categorized. So we would not be able to make a change of that magnitude without coming back before this board.
I agree with that, but there's a harder question, and I'm curious about your view of this. I'm hoping Ms. Hendricks can hear me at home. I got yelled at. If we're going to set this condition, right, that it's going to be an all-inclusive, that it's only for hotel guests and has this gigantic bar and restaurant that is very nice and luxurious. But suppose we set a condition that the board doesn't think you can meet. Like suppose someone wanted to open up a place down here to an arcade, but in order for that to function, they had to be closed June, July, and August. And we say, yeah, you can build an arcade, but you have to be closed June, July, and August. And we think that is not going to work. And the applicant says, well, yeah, but we want to build an arcade, but we'll agree that it'll be closed June, July, and August. And the board thinks, well, that condition is going to make this project fail, and now we're going to have a hotel that we allowed to be built that can't function. Is it a legitimate consideration for the board if our member thinks this isn't going to work, like we're going to build this hotel, and then in a year or 2 years or 3 years, it's not going to function, and now we're going to be in the very difficult spot of either having what's beautiful now, but will be an eyesore after 3 unmaintained summers and winters that can't operate. And now we're in our position where we have to let it be open to the public because it turns out that's the only business model that'll work. So if does a board have to allow you to have a condition that it thinks will cause the project to fail? I'm not saying they think that, but I'm curious about what you think of that legally, because that's what I think our member is, I think that's what's on a couple of their minds.
What would the condition be?
That you can, that you're building a giant, a beautiful hotel with a beautiful restaurant for 162 seats that's going to be all-inclusive in a, I mean, and this isn't my, I'm not making, I don't make policy judgments, and I'm not, I think what she's saying, though, is in a town known for its restaurants, is if that concept seems to be not something they have confidence in, do they have to allow you to put that as a condition in order to get the parking variance? Like, can they say, well, yeah, we understand you're willing to do that, but we don't think that'll work, and now we have a big hotel
So,
that doesn't work.
it's, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm genuinely asking, is the proposal that we don't limit it to hotels?
I'm making no proposals. I'm asking you.
No, yeah,
I'm
it's-
asking you, I'm just asking your position on what appears to be our board members' concern, that if they don't think that the concept will work, do they have to give you a variance based on that concept?
That's what you're asking us for.
And I am not saying they can or they can't. I'm asking you to, because if that happens, I don't want to be talking about this for the first time in the Superior Court. If you think that's an improper consideration, I kind of want to hear that conversation.
I would
happen
certainly, I think it's always dangerous and legally questionable at best to impose a condition or deny an application based on a hypothetical. The hypothetical being here that an all-inclusive resort-style hotel simply won't work in Cape May, which is something
They're
that,
doing on the opposite hypothetical, that a all-inclusive will work. I mean, there are two hypotheticals.
we're not, what are you saying on the opposite hypothetical?
Same things.
We're all working on hypotheticals. Your hypothetical is that it will work, because we don't have another example of it in town. And it may be our
Well, maybe
hypothetical
that's the
doesn't.
question, and Mike, if you can, maybe we can talk about, or perhaps provide the
That
board
was
with
the
some
question.
comfort
She asked the
that
direct
this
question.
will
You're asking-
work. Will this work?
Can I explain what's happening in our industry?
There you go.
There has been more and more all-inclusive resort-type properties going up around the world. Hyatt now has a division of just all-inclusive resorts. Marriott does. Hilton does. I mean, it used to be that the Poconos back in the day with the champagne hot tubs, that was how that worked. The hot tub started leaking. But our industry is evolving. A lot of it has to do with the aging of the population. And there are more and more elderly people that have money, they're traveling, they're looking for a higher-end experience. They don't necessarily want to get on a plane and fly somewhere. They don't necessarily want to get on a ship either. But they're looking for that experience. They want the ability to, if they just want to stay in the room and just walk across the street to the beach, and that's it. That's what they're looking for. And it's the experience. So what we're selling is an experience that is becoming more and more prevalent within the industry.
And, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Inn at Cape May, are they following this model as it exists today? They're not? Okay. Okay.
Okay, let me ask a question that's not hypothetical, and it's actually the numbers that you've provided to us. Explain to me why you've got 56 rooms, which would probably generate between 110 and 120 people, guest-wise, and you have a restaurant that holds 162 people.
I believe you got the pool area and the bar area, so they're two
And a
separate.
bar area that holds 67 people. Isn't that too much amenity if you're only going to serve?
Well, you have a bar area. I mean, people don't want to sit in the bar area for breakfast. So
Well,
you're
if they all come
limited.
down for breakfast, you have 40 empty seats you're never going to fill.
The bar area has a number of seats.
In the restaurant, you have 162 restaurant seats, and I'll give you 120 people, and all your rooms are filled, you have 120 people in there. You're never going to fill 40 seats in your restaurant.
There's 142 seats in the restaurant.
Not, I think it's 142.
Your sheet says 160.
162?
Well, there's 20 separate rooms.
Can you come up, or?
can't
Your
just
document
yell out.
says total restaurant dining seating, 162. And then you have 56.
Okay, so
Bedrooms.
20 were in a private room.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
it
sorry.
doesn't
I-
matter where they are.
Yeah. Obviously, special occasions, people may want to have a
I get
separate.
it, I get it. And then
seating arrangement.
they get, in the 12 people who go into the private room, that's 12 empty seats in the restaurant. So, I mean, it's not, you get what my point is, you've invited 120 people to stay at your place, and you've set up a restaurant for 162 people.
Well, I don't know that it's 120 people if you're talking about 53 sleeping rooms.
Well, I'm assuming there's 2 people in each bedroom.
It could be 2 to 4, I would probably
4
guess. if
people
it's
in
got
one
2.
bedroom?
It depends upon, I mean, if
Family,
there's 2
you
beds, you
have
have a
2
family,
kids?
2 kids,
We
2.
we can go back and forth about how many people are sleeping in what beds.
But, no, but I think, because you brought, I don't want to necessarily go down that road, but when you mention, because you're.
It's not that kind of a resort, just
No,
so you know.
the reason I brought it up was because,
You get my point?
yeah, but the only reason I brought that up was because, and one thing I'm always glad to do is provide a good laugh. You can always walk away from that. But with, your concept was premised upon 120 people. I was simply saying that it's a rough estimate. And
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know
what I
that we
said it
can-
was. That's what I
Okay,
said. it
fair
was.
enough, okay.
And
Just
my-
wanted to be sure.
Well, I'm trying to look at the numbers you gave us.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that there's going to be like 120 people coming into your place. You won't let anybody come from the outside, which I assume means that if some of your guests invite their parents over for dinner, they can't come in because they're
No,
not-
they can't use the property if they're not guests.
What's that?
They can't use the property or the amenities if they're not guests.
Okay.
So they can't be invited by
There will
guests.
be no company for dinner.
mean,
So that doesn't explain then why we have 40 seats.
I mean, again, this is a not legal argument, but I think there should be the same number of tables as rooms, because in my experience at hotels, every room uses up a table. So if there's 2 people in a room, they're going to sit at a 4-table seat, and there's going to be 2 people at it. You generally don't gather at the table. So, I mean, I don't know why the restaurant has to be crowded, but I'm just giving you the concept that I think most of the time, it's a table, a room, whether there's 2 people in the room or 4.
I don't know that, is that true typically?
Not on cruise ships, because they ask you to sit with people you never heard of.
Yeah.
And some people who,
Now, if you've had enough drinks
was
before,
on a
some
high-end
people on
cruise, they
cruises
didn't
don't
do
like that.
but you're absolutely correct.
I'm in trouble on,
We're not trying to force people to sit with other people that they don't know.
if that's true, I'm in trouble on the
You
cruise I'm
won't
going
have
on.
that problem because you have way too many seats for the number of guests you're going to have.
Can I go back to the hypothetical?
Sure, yeah, sure.
The hypothetical is that this is successful, and I hope that it would be, certainly. But as a planning board, I asked the question, is that what the city wants? Do we want hotels that see this success to say, we could build more rooms and not have the parking for it if we become an all-inclusive? And this town is built on mom-and-pop small businesses that have restaurants and bicycle rental places and museums and theaters. Don't we want those folks to get out and use those amenities and businesses that exist in town, the breakfasts and to me, it's like a whole different thought for the town, and I'm not sure it's such a good one for the Cape May Planning
Yeah, but
Board.
I could also argue the other way, that it's a choice that people want. Maybe somebody wants that place down here.
I'm just saying, I think you set a precedent that if one hotel does this, do we now allow other hotels to do the same?
Well, if I may answer that, and Rich, this might be getting into legal aspects that the board is either permitted or not permitted to consider. This would be the type of hypothetical that I think is a bit beyond the purview of the board. Because the question in your ordinance, in terms of the permissibility of what we're proposing, is hotel. It doesn't limit the type of hotel. It doesn't limit in terms of, can it be all-inclusive? Does it have to be open to the public? Does it not? And I can promise you, based on the previous applications, my client is very aware that having this open to the public would bring its own problems in terms of parking and public pushback. It certainly did in 2021. So this is a bit of a response to the city of Cape May as a way to say, okay, we heard you, so here's what we're proposing instead, something that doesn't exhibit the same concerns that you had with the 2021 application, which proposed that these entities be open to the public in order to draw in exactly what you're describing. The fact that my client's proposed business model may or may not work, which is something that I don't think anybody but the person sitting to my left, Mr. Marshall, is able to weigh on, is a basis by which to deny an application. It's a hotel. It's a permitted use. If the business decides to use an all-inclusive model, that, because they are the private property owner, that would be, I would say, their prerogative to do so.
Except that you've made the argument that this is the reason why we should be approving this application. You've driven that point from the beginning of this presentation.
It supports the variance.
It supports
yes.
your variance because you're saying that you're not going to need parking for the public.
Yes.
You also just said that it may not be just 2 people to a room. So if it's not 2 people to a room and it's 4 people, are they bringing another car? Because now all of a sudden we have 4 people in a room, and how many cars are they going to be bringing? Pardon? No, you're presuming it's 2 little kids. It could be 2 adult children.
And just for the sake of the record, that was the applicant's representative, Manny DeMuta, said 2 kids as opposed to 2
Okay,
separate cars.
all I'm saying is, we're working on the premise that it is 1 car per room. Now you've just introduced the fact that some of these bedrooms can accommodate up to 4 individuals.
Mm-hmm.
What the ages are you restricting them, that it's only 2 adults and 2 children?
No.
Okay, so you could have 2 young adults sharing a room with their parents.
That, in my opinion, doesn't discount the
You still have, you're not limiting the cars, are you? You're making the argument that it's 1 car.
There will be
per
1 car per room.
So somebody shows up with a car, you're going to tell them to go find their parking on their own.
This
wanna go down this road.
question, this
Hold
is,
on.
no,
Everyone-
I'm not saying we can't go down this road, I just think this is a
No,
question
I
for our
don't think
traffic
it's good for you
engineer.
that we do. We have an ordinance. Our ordinance says, and Craig will correct me if I'm wrong, that it's done by the number of bedrooms, and it's 1 per bedroom. That may be, am I wrong about that?
The parking generation for the number of rooms is based on the number of sleeping rooms.
Okay.
1 per sleeping room.
So that's a decision that the town has made. Whether we think that's a good one or a bad one, that's not for us to overrule today, okay? Our ordinance requires 1 parking space for 1 bedroom, and we can't just hold an applicant and say, well, we don't think that's a good plan. We think there should be 2 parking spaces for a bedroom, because bedrooms may have a big bed or a cot, and there may be 3. So today's not the day to overrule that. So I just want to, so that's not a useful conversation, okay?
I didn't get the impression that that was being argued. If we look at the parking count, the number of hotel rooms is 56, and they have 19 employees. And this, Mr. Shropshire, I think, leaned into this as part of his justification. They have 65 single spaces with up to 79 double-stacked valet spaces. That accommodates that. The issue is the 240-seat restaurant and bar seats that really don't, that are accessory, and that they're arguing and trying to justify the parking variance, because the parking variance is really encompassing those 240 seats. So that is what the board, I think, feels uncomfortable with, making sure that this business model works, making sure that this is not going to revert back to an open to the public, which would create a nightmare parking scenario in that neighborhood. So it is very important that all these layers of things sit well with the board so that they can justify granting the parking variance.
With that, I agree. I was directing my conversation to the discussion about how many cars are people going to bring to a single bedroom, and I'm saying that that is something that our ordinance has decided for us. So that's not something we debate today. If there's 1 bedroom, it's 1 parking space. And if we do something different than that, we will have a problem in the Superior Court. The ordinance says that. Now, the other things you've said, is totally legitimate consideration. I just didn't want to get in a discussion about how many cars are likely to drive to a single bedroom, because we've already decided that.
If I can quickly respond.
Can I expand on Craig's point before you go on?
Sure.
The the plans you've given us here with respect to the public areas, the restaurant, the bar, the pool, they haven't changed since the last set of plans. They're the same size, they're the same maximum capacities, they're the same space. But now you're telling us that it's only going to be used for the people who are booked into the rooms. That space was designed for an open bar, for an open restaurant. My point is, you've got too much amenity space for the limited number of people who are going to be in your building. Now, Maureen's point is, I think, if I'm listening, is, does this set up a runway for some sort of transition later on, if and when a business model that this is based on happens to not go over?
Well, that's the one thing I kind of wanted to respond to, and I'm glad.
good.
I
I'm
think
glad
you summed it up nice, and I think you've said the same thing. That's what I tried to convey before, is that can't legally happen without us appearing before this board again. We can't say, hey, this business model isn't working, we're going to make a quick transition and try and get the public more involved. That simply cannot legally happen without coming back before this board. So any attempt to do that would require an application before the board, which you could then weigh and then potentially and likely deny if that were to.
And if I could just chime in on that, and I can respect that, but then you're coming back to the board, and I think this is what we're trying to say, is then you're going to come back to the board, you're going to make that argument, and now we have a vacant building, and we're all sitting around looking at each other going, what an eyesore. And that's where we're trying to get to, and you haven't answered the question.
Well, that's the question that I think Mike will have to answer is, I mean, one thing, we can't with 100% guarantee, of course, that this will work. I don't think anybody on the planet can say 100% certainty, there's no way this can fail. Things happen. And this whole concept is premised on the idea that this business model fails. I can assure you my client wouldn't be moving forward with this business model if they didn't think it would work. But Mike, if you can, maybe just try and hone in on that point. In your experience in managing hotels, your experience working hotels, the things you've encompassed, your knowledge of Cape May and running the Inn at Cape May, why do you think that this specific model will be successful here, in addition to the testimony you've already provided with the evolution of the hotel business?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to that. It is the evolution of the hotel business, where people are looking for a different type of experience, especially after the pandemic, where people are looking for a real guest experience. They're not just looking to go to one place or another. They're looking for options. You've got a lot of major cities within driving distance. The population, as you know, within driving distance of Cape May is tremendous. And those people are looking for different things to do. And this is an option that gives them a certain peace of mind that they're going to get what they pay for. I would also point out that we will be charging some very hefty rates for this, which will, compared to what the Jetty is paying right now in tax revenue, is an occupancy tax and whatnot. It's going to be a tremendous addition to the city's coffers. So the traveling public has been evolving, and this is the next level that they're going to. They're looking for the next level experience.
If I can just follow up and expand a little further. But what we're, at least from my perspective, is back all the way to the beginning of the conversation, we have two hypotheticals that we're sitting here that we're weighing. So I need to hear a little bit more on how is that going to work in that section of the city based off of your experience in other towns running all-inclusive resorts.
The all-inclusive resorts historically have been found in your Sandals, your Caribbean island experiences, Mexico. The concept is moving into the continental United States. Like, again, I said back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, you had it in the Poconos. It's ran its course. the traveling public is evolving in this country where they're looking for different experiences.
Can you point to a town like Cape May where that business model is currently being applied?
I cannot, but I can certainly find it.
Well, in fact, on that quick note, I think this is a good time for a break, if I can have just 10 minutes with my client briefly.
Everybody will take a 10-minute break.
Thank you, appreciate it.
They have more, they have another, they have one more witness. Yeah. They have to put on the variance testimony from Mr. Schaefer. They had enough? Can I leave?
All right, everybody, we're going to try and get started.
Entirely this.
There was a question that whether they could move that easel over to the left.
Well, we might not have to, because
Okay.
what the applicant is going to propose, I think, is something that hopefully the board will be open to. Because, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't listen to what the board was saying, hear some of the public commotion behind me agreeing with what the board is saying in terms of their concerns. So what we're proposing is this. The applicant is willing to go back a little bit to the drawing board with respect to one thing. Not the whole thing, we're not going to redesign the whole concept, nothing like that. What we're essentially going to take a look at, because if I'm reading correctly, one of the big concerns of this board is the size and the number of seats in the amenity spaces, and how that might transition in the future, in addition to the business model, which again, our position is technically the business model is not a consideration for the board. But the size of the amenity spaces, we heard you loud and clear. So we'd like to go back to the drawing board a bit as to that, see if it's possible to shrink the amenity spaces to a certain degree without sacrificing, of course, our business model and the likely success of this. And we would like the board to adjourn this either to the, the May or June meeting to give us an opportunity to do that.
Can I comment on that?
I want Rich to comment first.
Okay.
My policy that I stick to on requests for adjournments is that it is a vote by the board.
Understood.
Particularly when we have 100 people in the audience, they're prepared to go tonight, and we're prepared to hear it. So generally, you've made your pitch for that, and that's fine. I'm not speaking against it. I generally let the board vote. If there's an attorney or someone who, I don't want a board to make a decision without hearing from, Mr. Allen, are you representing a series of objectors or something?
Representing 8 different objectors, as is Mr. Murphy, who's a planner and engineer.
well, I don't need to hear from Mr. Murphy on this topic, but if you wanted to say something on this, I'm going to give you the opportunity, but do you? Yeah, if you have a brief,
You need a mic. Can you borrow one of that mic, please?
Yeah, no, I got one here. We got a few. I think we're good.
While he's prepping, can I just ask one question, Rich? That's one of the things I was going to say. Let's hear from some other folks. But the other thing, too, is this request to adjourn to come up with a better plan for the public space, in which case we haven't even talked about the parking space yet. And I have questions about the parking spaces. Now, if we don't get a chance to flesh that out at a meeting and come back in May, we'll have to flesh that out then. That may be another set of problems, separate and apart from this public spaces.
I mean, in terms of the parking
if
spaces.
the board votes to adjourn, then we'll have if anybody has something they feel strongly about and they want the applicant to consider during the adjournment, we'll give you an opportunity to say that on the record, okay?
But in terms of the spaces, the only thing that would necessarily happen if we decrease the size of the amenities is it would decrease the number of parking spaces that are required.
How would that happen? Because the parking spaces are based
Let's
on
not
the
get off
rooms.
track.
No, the parking
No,
spaces are
required,
based on
not-
rooms, but technically, the 135 is the variance from which we need. We don't need a variance if it's just calculated based on rooms, but we need a variance related to the inclusion of the amenities, the number of seats in the restaurant. the
You
number
also
of
need
seats
a
in the bar.
variance for the stacked parking and variance.
Yes, as well. No, I'm not
I think
arguing that
that's what
point.
Mr. Crowley is referencing.
Yes, no, of course, and we'll have to, of course, address that as we move forward with our application. But what we're trying to do is be considerate of the board's comments, of their concerns, and potentially go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we heard you, the amenities are a little too big for you guys. We're going to decrease their size, decrease the number of seats that they have, and see if that assuages the board's concerns to some degree or another. Because
I'd rather, if you're asking me, I'd rather hear what the public has to say, and then hear what the board has to say with the other remaining issues we haven't discussed yet, and then go back and work out a plan that's acceptable.
I don't know
Otherwise,
that
you're
that's...
piecemealing it.
And Rich, you can correct me if
Well,
I'm wrong.
Mr. Crowley expressed his opinion, and he has one vote when we vote to adjourn, and that's fine, and he can vote,
Okay.
right? I mean, and so I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to undo everything. Let's
It's not undoing everything, it's
No, no,
it's
I-
redressing a
I am
particular
actually-
concern of the board.
I'm trying to help you here.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
mean,
Fair enough.
Rich, is the
Okay.
proper terminology adjourn or table it?
I consider them the same thing, but I guess
What would you recommend?
I'll let council pick, but I think, I usually say adjourn, you know. it's a
Adjourn
question.
is, I mean, I consider them synonymous as well, so the terminology is irrelevant to me.
Go ahead.
I'll wait.
You're good now.
So I think simply, I mean, there's a number of people in this room that traveled long distances. There's also a number of people in this room that paid professionals to be here tonight. And essentially what we're doing is paying for the fact that they weren't prepared to present this application adequately tonight. This application dates back to 2010 when things first started here. The public opposition to the proposed amenity space and to this proposed development hasn't changed. This applicant knew that there'd be opposition to this coming in, yet they chose to proceed tonight anyway based on that. I think given that, the fact that we're here and ready to present an opposition, an adjournment request is just too out of the question at this point. They're too far along, in my opinion.
Can I quickly respond to two comments based on that? Just because I think some of them need to be addressed from a legal perspective. I would disagree with the assertion that the applicant was unprepared to propose what we're proposing. What we're simply hearing from the board is what we're proposing makes the board uncomfortable. So we know to move forward is to present a certain level of risk. And I understand that some of the members of the public objected to that, or we knew that people were going to object to this. We know that without any degree of doubt, 100% certain, that no matter what we propose here beyond the existing motel is going to be met with some pushback from the public. What we're trying to do is take the board's, the public's concerns into account and amend accordingly. And the resistance to that, I think, is almost to force okay, we've proposed something, we've received what the board is saying, we're looking to make a quick change to address that. And the fact that people have traveled to come here, my client have traveled to come here, I've traveled to come here, we've paid professionals as well. That's simply the cost of doing business in a land use context. That's what this technically involves. We welcome the public's comment. We would certainly love their feedback. I don't think it's appropriate to do until we've rested and proposed all our witnesses. But what we're telling you here tonight is it seems like we're being presented the option of continue with a plan that the board already appears uncomfortable with, or try and address the board's concerns and then be penalized for that as well. And I'm not necessarily saying that's just kind of the catch-22 my client seems to find itself in. So once again, I would say what we're trying to do is not delay this. We're not trying to waste anybody's time. We're not trying to weigh the public or the objector's time or their money. We're trying to address the board's concerns with the application as proposed and make a change based on those.
Can I just interject for one moment? Page 7, you received Mr. Hurlis's planning board
Yes,
preparation
and it
document.
mentions that
Page
there-
7, second paragraph down, it says, "The applicant should be prepared to discuss this issue with the board and verify the restriction can be enforced and there is adequate off-street parking, available on-street parking in this neighborhood has been observed." He's included all of the questions with regard to the amenities, the accessory amenities in this property, and said,
Understood.
"Come prepared to
We've-
discuss it."
And we have come prepared.
Well, now you're asking for us to postpone or adjourn it based on the fact you want to go back and recalibrate your design. So I'm
We're
not
trying to
sure-
address, the board has made it clear they're concerned about the size, so we're saying.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm-
Mr. Chairman, we took a 10-minute break at the applicant's request. We've been talking about this for the next 10 minutes. I think, should we have a vote and just say if we're going to continue this or not?
Use a microphone, Mr. Monizer.
I do have a few of my clients that would like to say something, that have traveled all the way down here to say something.
Well,
It's obviously in your discretion as to whether you hear them, but they do want to be heard.
Well, we haven't opened to the public yet. So there's a request for an adjournment. Here's what I'm going to say about the adjournment in this instance. And you don't have to listen to me. I get paid for advice people don't take all the time. Happens all the time.
Me too.
This is a big project, okay? It is zoned for a hotel. There's supposed to be a hotel on this property. That's what your master plan says, okay? So a hotel that doesn't use public parking is the best option the neighborhood could ever have. Okay, that's the home run for a property zoned as a hotel that is not going to use any parking in the public is a home run for the town and for the neighborhood. That's a fact. Okay, now, I think it would be appropriate to give it as much thought and careful analysis as you can, and if you're going to reject it, having given it the best chance it can get. Now, or if you're going to accept it, accept the best version of it that you can. And it's an inconvenience to have to do this another night, and I've sat on this board, we've refused to, in fact, it was this applicant, and we refused an adjournment, and the court upheld that decision. So it's not that we can't do it, okay? So you have the power to do it, it's in your discretion. But on a project this important, that has the potential to be a good version of a hotel that can be there, I think it's appropriate to get all the information. And it may be that nothing changes. It may be they're unable to persuade you. But to make them go forward now when they're saying that they may be able to make it better, well, then that's something you should consider, okay? If you don't do it, it's within your discretion to do that, okay? Recognize the inconvenience to the crowd, but you know what? We probably weren't going to finish tonight anyway. All right, you all got to be here another time anyway. So why not be here with a plan that they're comfortable they've given you their best shot? Now, I admit this applicant has had, while I've been here, 6 or 7 chances at their best shot, and sometimes before that, okay? But this all-inclusive thing is a new concept. It's new to everybody. So if it takes 2 meetings to really flesh it out and either accept it or reject it, then maybe that's what you got to do. But you vote your conscience. It's within your discretion to do it. But I just want you to think about all those things as you vote. So I'd ask someone to make a motion, and either we're going to press forward, because we're going to be done in 1 hour and 15 minutes anyway. So press forward, or
We're not going to be done, like you said, but we're going to be cut off.
we're going to be
Yeah.
coming here another night in 1 hour and 15 minutes anyway, on one plan or another.
I have a question for you. If this structure did not have a restaurant, or actually for you, Craig, I guess, if it didn't have a restaurant, there wouldn't be any variances needed, would there? So they could just go ahead and do the hotel, same size, same look, same parking.
It would be close.
But they wouldn't require any variance, because it, even without a restaurant.
Same room count,
Because
same number of employees.
no, it'd be a different number.
It
of
wouldn't have the
employees.
necessary number of employees.
We'd have to figure that out. That's
Yeah.
But
But theoretically,
theoretically, if they
it would be a by right project.
Yes.
So which is,
and they wouldn't need,
Mm-hmm.
and then if that was approved, they would have the total number of parking spaces required.
yeah, okay. Just curious.
Now, it's up, Mr. Chair, there's also the concern that the applicant may not have heard all of the concerns, so that they may not make amendments to their plan to address the board's concerns. So, I don't know exactly how to repair that. My thinking was, if you agree to adjourn it, was to have a conversation about things that you'd like them to consider during the interim, but I don't know how else to fix that. Or we could just spend the next hour and 15 minutes, we could spend some time listening to the public's concerns or whatever. You're the chairman, so I'm giving you.
Yeah, but how can we,
I-
he's going to object to that.
Yeah, I would, I mean, again, it's the board's prerogative, I certainly can't stop them, but I would object to opening it to the public until, of course, we rested our case in chief.
And Mr. Chairman, in all due respect to that, then we're not hearing all of the concerns. We're hearing what the board's concerns are,
Well, we
but
will have,
might not be.
we will hear their concerns once they redo this. The public has every right, after he represents whatever they're going to do, then the public can obviously
And
discuss.
if I can provide the board with some degree of comfort as to that. if
I was
we-
just going to say.
I think the
that-
concern being, I'm sorry.
But one of your reasons for the adjournment was because of those concerns. So.
Well, the concerns expressed.
Well,
by the-
you mentioned the.
Well, because
public as well.
I can hear the.
No, I
the sense
understand
behind it.
that, but I'm just saying, you made that a condition of wanting the adjournment.
Well, it's the
is their
reason.
concerns. So I think it's fair for them to
For
voice
some
those
reason,
concerns.
no one ever thinks of this, but there's a reason that the attorneys have to put their name and address in the notice. Anyone is free to contact the applicant at any time
Yes.
when an application is pending to express their concerns and things that worry them. In fact, attorneys want them to do that so they can deal with it ahead of time. So everyone here has the notice that was published. I am sure the address and phone number and maybe even the email address of Highland Levin. I think that's your firm, right?
It's my last, I'll even spell it, CHACANIAS at highlandlevin.com. My number is 856-355-2992.
And you're free to express your concerns and things you want to see in the plan at any time before and after this meeting.
But just to very quickly, I can let the board kind of know, if this doesn't work, I think the applicant is probably, this is probably the last attempt that the applicant can make in its own mind to change this, to assuage some of the board's concerns. If we can shrink it, great, we'll propose it, and that will be the proposal. If we can't, we'll be coming back discussing the same proposal you have before you here tonight. So I don't think there's going to be a concern of the public making additional comments at public comment and me coming up and saying, oh, I want to make more changes. At that point, we'll simply be addressing the public's comment in connection with our professionals, as is the normal course for any application.
Mr. King, how did the public's comments become public to us? I mean,
Because there's going to be another meeting, and they're going to be able to say
so
whatever they
we're
want
going
to
to
say.
have, the public is free to contact this gentleman,
Sure.
and then they're going to then restate the same thing at the next meeting, if we
Now,
agree.
in a perfect world, the way the system is designed to work is that the applicant publishes their notice, and then people who have concerns about the application are supposed to contact them ahead of the meeting and try to address those concerns. And that actually happens a lot. You just don't hear about it because they address the concerns. So the neighbor calls and says, I see you're putting on an addition. Can you move it back 2 feet? And they say, okay, we move it back 2 feet. So that happens. So that's not uncommon. And things that they fix, the public may not have to talk about. It's been fixed. Or if they don't fix it, they come up and they say, we asked them to fix this and they didn't do it and we don't like it. And then they do that at the next meeting.
And just to piggyback off of that, I would welcome that. If we can address a particular member of the public's concerns, we will do so. If we can't, we'll say so. And then they can certainly come here and say, hey, I asked them to do this, they said no. That will be their prerogative to do so. And then in this particular case, they won't just have 10 days from when they got the notice, they'll have at least a month. So the time to do that will have increased. Now, again, I can't promise that we'll address every concern of every member of the public, But it's certainly something we're willing to consider.
I'm just trying to be respectful.
No, understood.
Came out this evening and sitting here. You've had your time to be able to voice, your position on it. So I'm just trying to make sure that there's an equal voice for the individuals sitting here and those that are being represented. So that's my reason. It's one thing to communicate with you, but there's something else very powerful about a public statement.
Understood.
Rich, there's nothing if we'd adjourn, there's nothing stopping these people from addressing it right now with him, right?
No, I mean, it's a
It's up to him.
free world.
Rich, can I push?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Because, they're not done yet, so we can't open the public comment until they're done. That's not fair.
No, we've agreed to that. We can't.
Yeah, so if we'd adjourn, they have their opportunity to speak to them right now and give them their concerns and.
I think he's saying that they have the opportunity to speak
talk.
to the applicant.
Yeah.
You'll hang around for a little bit, talk to whoever wants to talk to you, right?
I'll hang around. I don't know if it'll be until
Okay.
1 o'clock, but,
No, I get it. I get it.
I don't know. One
And I
thing,
mean,
It's
and
just-
if I could just jump in on that too, we do have city staff, I'm looking at Karen, who, we need to be respectful of people's time on that as well. That is how we proceed.
That's just,
So,
one thing I'll say, though, I'm happy to stick around and chat, without question. We want the public's comments. I can tell them now, I can't agree to anything tonight. I just want to make that clear. I can't say, agreed, and then we'll make those changes. I'm happy to talk about concerns. I'm happy to bounce them off my client. And if to the extent that there are ones that we can agree to, we will certainly do so. But I just don't want anybody thinking that they're going to talk with me and then have a surefire, bona fide promise that, yes, we'll make that change. I don't want to put anybody under any delusions about what they're going to get in speaking to me tonight.
let's be fair. If we don't agree to adjourn.
Fair enough. Then
keep moving on.
it's
Keep
a
moving
moot
on.
point, yeah.
Okay.
And we haven't heard all the testimony yet either, have we?
No.
You're not deciding the application, you're deciding adjourn or not adjourn. So someone make a motion to adjourn, and then someone second it, and then vote.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Yes means you adjourn, no means they continue.
Karen, can you roll call, please?
We have a motion by Mr. Crippen, seconded by Deputy Mayor McDade. Mr. Gorgon.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
No.
Deputy Mayor McDade.
No.
Mr. Crowley.
No.
Mr. Lundholm.
Yes.
Mr. Riggs.
no.
Mr. Paducis.
No.
Mr. Crippen.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
I think that's 5-4 no, so continue your presentation.
Absolutely. Okay, so Mike, the question that's on everybody's mind is, how do we know that this business model is going to work? And then the second question is, how are we going to enforce the restriction that the hotel amenities be limited strictly to the hotel guests? Those are kind of the two bugaboos that we're dealing with tonight.
All right, so if you look at the way the hotel sells to groups, and it could be bird watchers, it could be anything. I mean, a lot of groups come into a hotel and they want breakfast, a boxed lunch, they want dinner, they want alcohol coupons in order for them to stay at your hotel. So if you look at just the industry as a whole, we already do this. It's just not all at once. So by taking this concept into a singular facility, we're just looking at expanding on it, but we're looking at expanding on it to individuals, not only just groups. We're still going to sell to groups, and we're still going to get the people that want to do that. Every hotel, every full-service hotel in Cape May is selling to groups right now. So, and they're selling to those different, it could be a bicycle club, it could be, there's so many different, it could be a wedding, there's so many different things, different types of groups that will do that. And we do include that. That's part of the package that we sell. So this is not a new concept. The difference is it's all in one place, and that everybody is being asked to participate in that concept. However, we're saying you don't have, we're giving them options. You don't want to have dinner tonight? Then we'll give you credit for that. You don't want to have breakfast today? We'll give you credit for that. You can still go out and enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. but it's nothing new. I mean, there's so many, and I'm sure, I mean, you look at motor coach groups. I mean, everything, every one of their meals is covered. So this is nothing new. Why we think this will work here is because it is a unique destination. There are a lot of people that maybe don't know about Cape May. You know, maybe we're going to open the eyes to a new set of guests. And these are going to be guests that are going to be paying very well to stay in this facility. And we're looking at taking a really not a very nice hotel right now and making it something beautiful. We're looking at taking a hotel that probably should have been torn down 20 years ago and making it something that the city can be proud of. They can go on the postcards, they can go up on these billboards over here. So that's the sell, is something unique to this community. And looking at a customer base that may not normally think to stay here, but we're giving them something new to think about, a new option. I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Well, adding to that first one, and we'll get to the second question. Do you have any concerns with respect to using this business model in Cape May in terms, based on your experience, your long time working in and operating and running hotels, do you have any concern that this business model will be unsuccessful here?
I do not. I really think that this is, and again, maybe we go after more groups. Maybe we don't go after more individuals. I mean, there are ways to pivot and move. We're going to have a beautiful facility. We're going to have top-notch food and beverage options for people to enjoy. Again, word of mouth will carry this to the next level.
I have a question about the food and beverage offerings you have. That's a key pivot to the success of your model, having a range of food and beverages.
Mm-hmm.
And almost half of the public space on the first floor is dedicated to a bar, lounge, and I don't know what a guest library is, but it's right next to the bar, so I assume it's a lounge of some sort. And yet there's no liquor license available. Are you going to have a liquor license to be able to operate this? And if not, one's not available, how much of your plan gets sabotaged in the process?
I don't do adult liquor licenses. I'm an operator.
The intention is to have a liquor license. Obviously, if it doesn't have if there's no option available, I believe there's already one that we're investigating. So, but obviously, our intention is to have a liquor license. We're aware that, you know, that in terms of the serving of alcoholic beverages is somewhat pivotal to the success of the hotel. And if the board, again, wants to make the acquisition of a liquor license as a condition of approval, we would certainly agree to that because our business model depends on it, so it wouldn't necessarily be a push for
Have you guys decided on months of operation?
That was my next question.
I believe it's going to be all year round.
All year round? Okay.
Yeah,
12 months?
12 months, yes.
My only concern is, you know, they say to follow the science. You've heard that a lot. And you're asking for us to be an experiment in this town. You said you've managed or owned over 400 hotels, that you can't provide one example of a hotel that functions as this in your portfolio. That's my only comment. You've never done this before.
If I can address that again, and Dan, this isn't intended to be adversarial, but one of the things that I want to implore the board to understand is the type of hotel is not necessarily the question. The ordinance permits a hotel, as Mr. King said himself, and a hotel that doesn't rely on public parking is almost a slam dunk as it relates to the ordinance. And that's what we're proposing here tonight. So the simple...
I don't disagree with that, but I just want to say, and I'm not offering an opinion on the vote of the project, but I have to say that I do think it is a legitimate consideration when you're basing your request for a variance on a particular business concept to justify it. There has to be sufficient evidence in the record for the board to conclude that that concept is likely to succeed, so that the variance can have a duration proportionate to the investment of the hotel. Because if it doesn't work, now we are in a very difficult spot. We either have an eyesore or we have to let you have a public hotel, which is not what the board wants. So I am not saying that they have to decide a certain way, but I do think that it is a legitimate basis to deny the variance or grant the variance, just as if they think this concept will work, then that's a legitimate basis to grant the variance. If they don't think it will work, then it's a legitimate basis to deny the variance. So I do think you've put that issue in play by proposing it the way you proposed it. And I am not taking a position on whether it works or not. I've been to all-inclusives, and they were great, so I don't have any.
But the key aspect in...
No. You made the argument at the beginning that the operational model was the justification for not needing public parking, okay? That was your premise when you sat down at the table. So, based on that is why we're having this conversation. So let's just agree that that was what your argument was, and the argument of your applicant, so that, we're not keep going around in a circle on this. That's what you guys have basically said to us. The reason why your justification for not needing 135 parking spaces is because this is your operational model, and this is your operational marketing expert.
But the purpose of the all-inclusive aspect, and the most important aspect of that particular proposed model, is the fact that the amenities will be limited to hotel guests only. That's the basis by which we're doing it. That's the primary justification for the variances. Now, again, I'm not disagreeing with what you said. Our operational model serves as justification for the variance. But the aspect of it, the more particular aspect of that, is the fact that because the resort is all-inclusive, the amenities will be limited to hotel guests, which means we don't have to account for the public coming in the same way the 2021 application did in terms of the additional parking necessity. So that was, if that's clear, I hope it is. If it's not, then, okay.
And if that model, if it should fail at some point, you had testified that you will come back to the board and ask for a site plan approval?
Well, once our official testimony is that we don't believe it will fail. Operating under the hypothetical that if it does fail.
Nobody wants to get cancer.
I'm not saying necessarily that we will come back with a separate proposal to open it to the public. I'm not saying we'll come back with anything. What I'm saying is the model itself cannot change for whatever the reason.
You got a dead building, you're going to come back with something. So you're going to come back with something, and you're going to go in front of the board and ask for what amounts to a self-inflicted hardship. And the board's got a choice at that point. It might be 10 different people. They have a choice of giving you that waiver or not. And at that point, that's going to be a very tough call to make. Not another 10-minute.
So very quickly, I think this might be, so we're going to pivot a little bit. I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that a representative of the applicant, Manny Demutis, was here. Manny has heard some of these comments and is prepared to address them. He currently is the operator and owner of the Jetty Motel, so obviously he's very familiar with the property. So at this time, I'd like to, Mike, if you could just step down momentarily and have Manny come up and provide some comments. Manny, you'll be sworn in
That's
first.
perfectly fine. It's just that a gentleman has to remain for any cross-examination by any member of the public.
They will all remain, yep.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Munis, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thanks, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We had a request from the public to move these
Sure,
exhibits, please.
You can go ahead, Manny. I'll move those right now.
Yeah, so the idea, I think there's a lot
Get the
of,
full name? I didn't.
Emmanuel C. Demutis.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of information that's getting thrown around, and it's getting thrown around in error. And so I just would like to clear the record. The rooms themselves, the room revenue themselves carries the project, okay? The amenity space is an amenity to the guests. So it's the icing on the top. It's not critical to our operations. The question was raised, do we do this currently here? And the answer is yes, we do it all the time. Okay, I mean, how many hotels have you stayed in where breakfast was included? Well, you think it was just free, or do you think they added it to your room tab? The birding groups, the birding groups, we have, I think, 4 or 5 this year, and they're just one small segment where we feed them, we put them to bed. They use our meeting space for tutorials. It's an active weekend for these folks, and we have many of them. So I think one of the things, we're not trying to preclude, as a person who's done a lot of community planning, we're not trying to preclude people or isolate people from the rest of Cape May City, but I've been doing this since I was 34. This application has been before this board since I was 34 years old. I'm 55, okay? Let me say that again, okay? We've owned the jetty since 2005. And what we did was we heard from the neighbors over the last 21 years that they didn't want an impact to their neighborhood, that they didn't want, what they wanted and what they didn't want. I mean, do I think it's a crying shame that nobody sitting behind me is going to be able to come into the hotel unless they pay $800 a night? Yeah, I do. I think that's awful. But that's the ordinance. That's the rules we're playing under. And we feel comfortable with that. We've owned 3 hotels in Cape May. My family's been in the hospitality business since 1969. I take all the risk. The idea that it's going to be a failed, and I'm laughing because I deal with a lot of failed projects and turn them around. The idea that it's going to be a failed project is in my opinion, doesn't take into account the experience that we have as a team. We're trying to have the least amount of impact on the neighborhood, creating a beautiful building. The room revenue from this building will be 4 times what the existing room revenue is, not that this is material, to the existing jetty. And we're able to provide each one of those guests an amenity that's exclusive. They don't have to sit. Why is there more seats? Because we have the potential for up to 152 people to be on property at one time. Okay? Now, there's going to be seating plans, and everybody's going to eat. I'm going to eat at 5:30, and you're going to eat at 7:30, and there's going to be vacant tables, but they're not going to be utilized for the public. They're going to be utilized for the guests and the comfort of the guests. And everything, we don't have enough chase lounges at the pool area to support the number of guests that could possibly be on property at one time. And where this really gained roots this concept gained roots was hearing what the neighbors had said over the last 21 years, and realizing that at the Inn of Cape May, the first question that everybody asks is, what's our census? How many bodies do we have? How many souls do we have on property? Because we can tell within 10% what kind of food and beverage revenue we're going to have on any given day. And so it's a much simpler plan. We know how the number of meals it's a much more efficient operation system, probably the most efficient in the fact that if you have 100 people on site, you're not going to make 120 breakfasts. Our food waste goes to zero. The amount of people that we have, the amount of employees that we need to pull off that get dramatically decreased. So I just wanted to set the record straight. We've been trying to get this exact same building approved by this board for 21 years. And we've gone through every gyration of this. And yeah, I'd really like it to be open to the public, but that's not even a consideration today. We refuse, okay? We're not going to open it to the public. It's a shame. It breaks community continuity, but the parking ordinances don't support it. And this board consistently has not supported it. So we found a way that we can get a return on investment, as you said, over a 21-year period, and provide our guests with a first-class exclusive experience. So if I'm paying $1,000 a night to stay at A-View, I don't want to have to sit and wait for somebody at the bar. Now, is 40 seats at the bar? I heard that all night, right? 40 seats at the bar. Well, you know what? At 2 o'clock, there may be, and it's a rainy day, you may have all 40 seats used. Okay? At 9 o'clock in the morning, probably not going to have anybody there, right? So these various different spaces and amenity spaces that we have for the guests that are staying there, okay, are there for them. They're there for them. And we feel like we can create a fantastic guest experience. And is it ever anything we ever thought it was going to be? Absolutely not. But this is where we are today. This is the plan that we have today. It's a good plan. I really believe that. I believe that it's a good business model. I'm not as old as Mike Marshall, but, you know, I think that he, you know, I've been in this business for a really long time. And so I would want you to consider all these things, like take it at its reality. Is it going to, are we going to invest $25 million to construct a new hotel and have it be a rusting hulk? No, we don't have one of them. We don't have one of them in our portfolio. Although we did buy the inn, so we've been putting her back together every year, slowly but surely. So, I mean, that's what's going on here, and I just wanted I wanted to assuage your fears. We can't on one side say that this is going to be a failed business plan, and then on the other side we're telling you that we feel very comfortable with the number of seats we have in the dining room, but it's too many. It's a contradictory statement. So, and since we're not serving the public, we're not serving the outside public, we're only serving guests. I think it's a fantastic new / old model. You know, I was digging through the inn the other day, and you know what I found from 1905? I found it was an all-inclusive hotel. Okay, pudding was 10 cents, and a ham and cheese sandwich for lunch was 25 cents, and chicken livers, God forbid, were like $1.25. So people used to come here and camp out in their hotel, and that's what they did. So this community has been inundated with this for the last 150 years.
Mr. Ramirez, when you were, as a business person, I know you do your investigations. The people who are investing $25 million, did they do any analysis of other examples where this model was used and succeeded? And can you describe to the board some of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, I think you're talking about sponsor, right? So when you go to get funding for a construction project, we're talking about a resort hotel with a limited schedule. And they're going to say, okay, so the numbers make sense, right? The numbers physically make sense. We know that we do 67% of our business May through September, and that's enough to support the building. We also know that it's awful for our employees when we don't stay open 12 months a year. I mean, it just disrupts their entire lives. And so we committed at the end to stay open, even though some months have been painful, to keep people working and keep people on property. And that's a commitment. That's a commitment that we've made to our employees. I'm sorry, Rich. What did you? You asked me a question, and I'm pretty sure I talked right around it.
Maybe there isn't an answer, I'm sorry, but I assume that the people who are considering funding
Yes, by sponsor.
the project said to you, has this been done anywhere else and was it successful? And I was wondering if you had any examples of that you could share with the board, because that was one of the questions that they asked.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of, especially in New England, but there's a bunch of hotels, boutique hotels especially, that provide this service. You know, we interviewed, before we hired Mike and TPG, you know, we interviewed a group out of Nantucket, and we talked specifically about this model, and they loved it. I mean, you love it for the labor efficiency, you love it for the supply efficiency. But how we're going to fund this, and how is this going to get funded? It's going to get funded because a banker from Philadelphia is going to say, is Manny have the physical capability to pull off this project, and does he have the experience? And in my experience over probably about $500 million worth of deals, that answer has always been yes.
Excuse me, would the banker then ask you for a market research analysis?
We would give them, we would give them a 1 year, a 10-year, a 1 year, a 5 year pro forma. You know, when we bought the inn, the inn was operated, you know, in one way. And we went to the lending institution and said, we're going to totally change what's going on. We're going to raise rates by 4 times or 5 times. We're going to raise the cost of food, totally change that business. Oh, by the way, we're not going to close. We're going to stay open. And we totally changed that business model. It was never even a question. It just wasn't a question.
Now, but market research for this project?
There's tons. We know how many people. Cape May County Board of Tourism is an incredible resource for anybody who has is in the hospitality business here. They can tell you exactly how many people are going to be here on a given, in a given year. You know, we know what months we're going to be busy, what months we're not going to be busy. We know that we could use some more hotel rooms in Cape May. At least that's my opinion from a community planning standpoint. And I spent 20 years on a planning board like yours.
Just Manny, real quick, and if I may, I think the question is more, once the investor is deciding whether or not to put this money down.
It would be a
for this,
bank, but yeah.
But what, investor, bank, however you want to categorize it, you said a 5 to 10 year pro forma. What exact documentation in terms of the likelihood of success are you going to provide to them?
It's all market study. So what we did was we took the operational history of the Jetty Motel and some of the Cape Resorts properties that had publicly, they had public, their information is public, and our 23-year experience in the Cape May market, and we determined what our occupancy rate should be. And in Cape May, it's about 67% for 1 year, and that's being open 12 months a year. And then we assigned a value of what we felt like what is in our comp set. Our comp set is what other hotels do exactly what we do or have the amenities in the rooms that we do. And you factor all those things in. There's lots of footnotes to these tabs. And we wouldn't have presented this plan. I would have not done this plan if we didn't already have a full understanding of the financial success of this project.
But to the mayor's point, you didn't have any Cape May property to test it against, because there is no Cape May property like that.
Listen, I used to appraise real estate all over the place, and the object is to find a property as similar as you can, and then you just adjust it back to what you think it is to Cape May location.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
You can't make anything up, but you just find properties and you adjust for it. That's all.
And the market's very specific. You know, I mean, if you think about what happens here in July, the last couple Julys have been very, very slow for us at the end, unreasonably slow. And, you know, it's kind of like the stock market. You're constantly adjusting rate until you get to a sweet spot. And Zach knows this. I mean, you're constantly saying, okay, what's everybody doing? And we want to be within 5% of the leaders. And some hotels in Cape May outperform everybody else by miles. So we kind of discount them and say, oh, we're not going to be them. And we get into a subset group. And, you know, we already have, I don't know, 4,000 rooms at the Inn booked already for 2025. So we have a pretty good understanding of this marketplace. And by the way, this is a small project. Okay, this is a very small project. The Inn is 52 rooms, and it has all kinds of facilities. This is a very small project. It's not. It has about a 12 to 15-month build time, and that's with massive weather delays. So it's not a big project.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Mr. Demutis? Okay. With that, I think we'll pull up our engineer and planner, Mr. Andy Schaefer. Thank you, Minnie.
Schaefer, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, Andy, you know the drill. I think you've been before this board before, but to the extent they wish, discuss your qualifications, your background, and we'll get you.
Yeah, I will. 41 years as a professional engineer, 37 as a professional planner. I had to do the math before. And I have been before this board before and most other boards in all of Cape May County and Atlantic County.
Mr. Chair. We're fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been to the site a number of times.
And just to be clear, I think the item that you just put up is the site plan, correct?
That is correct. It's the site plan as it was submitted.
All right, I think this will be A9 or 10?
It's been a while. 7, 8, I don't see a 9, so I'm going to say A9. Ms. Keenan would usually chime in here. It's A10, yes, I don't know why I answered, I should just asked her.
Give or take.
All right, except for the parking we're going to discuss, the site is completely in conformance with the ordinance, and in fact, we've lowered the impervious coverage from a non-conforming 78 plus or minus percent to 70, a little under 75%. So that's one thing we brought into better conformance. The site currently has, I believe, 34 rooms, and I counted 38 parking spaces, which I know there's a little bit of controversy over how many there really are existing. So it's, with the number of employees in a motel only would have without a restaurant, it's likely compliant with only a few employees involved. So as stated 100 times before, the amenities are meant to be for the residents or the guests only. And as such, I'm suggesting as a professional that we don't need a variance for the number of parking spaces, and there are actually 4 spaces over what is needed, as long as the condition is set on the site that the amenities are only for the guests and no one else, no public. However, we will need a variance for the stacked parking. Recognize that for sure, but I think it shows some innovation to allow parking that cleans up what's already there so that it is not impinging upon the public streets in the way it does now.
Andy, very quickly, if I may, because I just want to address the quick comment that you made. You pushed back a little bit on whether or not we actually need the variance because we're limiting this to hotel guests only. But you're still going to provide an analysis based on the positive and negative criteria under the assumption, essentially, that we do need that variance, correct?
Right, and the same argument.
I'm just going to say something, because I'm already picturing the titles on the appeal. Okay, I just want to say I disagree with that position, because your own application claims that a hotel use is a hotel use. So the fact that you're going to use it differently than anyone else doesn't mean you don't have to comply with the ordinance. So I believe you do need the variance for the hotel and the accessories uses that are there, but you're just trying to justify that variance by using the hotel in a particular way. So I disagree with your analysis.
That's correct.
But that's okay, we're allowed to disagree.
I
just
didn't
wanna
quite
make
have a
sure.
chance to finish.
And I think the board engineer agrees with me.
Okay, and his letter bears that out. And quickly, before we get to the parking variances, I want to talk about the site triangle variance that was brought up. We're not going to be asking for that. Mr. Hurlis pointed out to me there are 2 different ways to calculate a site triangle. One is the city ordinance, which is a totally different shape than the AASHTO state version of a site triangle. And we're either going to move the sign, put it on the building itself, but we will fully comply with all site triangle requirements, both city and state mandated. And then also the, okay, that addresses that. So we still have 2 variances left. For the number of parking spaces, we're providing 79 parking spaces where 135 is required. But we contend the use, which is a little unique, would only require 75 spaces, which would leave us 4 over. And of course, the stacked parking is mitigated by the fact we're going to be doing valet parking, so nobody's going to be stacking their own cars in there. If I could go over some of the, characterizing this as a C2 variance, which has some familiarity with even a D variance and providing positive and negative criteria for the variance. The first one I want to point out is there's an improvement into public safety. I counted 16 parking spaces that you have to back out onto a public right-of-way, 3 parking spaces that are very close to the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Beach Avenue. It's just a dangerous situation. So what we're proposing is going to create an improvement to public safety for the motoring public. Additionally, as far as the parking goes, there are 10 spaces that have a non-compliant depth of parking, as well as a non-compliant drive aisle in the same area. Another positive to the variance and the size and scope of the building will be that there's an aesthetically more positive than the current building, which I know has already been covered. All of the driveways on Beach Avenue will be removed, creating the opportunity, if the city decides they want to do that, to add 6 parking spaces. Now, that 6 parking spaces is calculated on the other side of Second Avenue and Beach. There's striped parking there now, and they set back their parking from the curb of Second Avenue by 23 feet, and their parking spaces are also 23 feet. Using that criteria with the driveway at the north end as well as Second Avenue of 23 feet spacing, we have room for 6 parking spaces. And there may or may not be available several parking spaces on Second Avenue, depending on the protocol that the city would want to use for the distances between driveway and parked cars. But as a minimum, there's an opportunity for the city to add 6 parking spaces, or we add them, however, but they would still be city parking spaces and metered.
Could you clarify that? You're talking about 6 spaces on Second Street and 6 spaces?
No, 6 spaces on Beach, and depending on the protocol or distances between where parked cars are in the driveway, there could be room for up to 3 spaces on Second, but I can't necessarily promise or guarantee that.
Oh, on the plan, you have 6 spaces on Second.
I know, and I shouldn't. And so if I can, I'm honest, I'll be simple. With the 3 driveway locations, again, depending on what the city decides in spacing between parking spaces and driveway, there may or may not be room here. There's certainly room. That's dangerous. Can you pull that leg towards? Thank you. There's a hairpin mark.
Andy, just make sure you speak into the microphone.
Okay. Thank you. There's a hairpin marking here which sets this first parking space on Beach Avenue 23 feet away from the curb line of Second Avenue. We're suggesting the same thing here and the same thing here where this driveway is into the parking lot adjoining. And there's more than ample room for 6 parking spaces along Beach. But I can't guarantee or promise that we could ever do that without the city's input on Second Avenue.
But to the extent the city required it, it's something we have the space to provide, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's the only part of Beach that doesn't have parking, parallel parking along there.
But they're all public spaces.
Correct.
Yes, and they would be public.
They would continue to be public spaces. We don't need them for the parking regime as we have calculated it. And the other thing, positive, being an all-inclusive resort with its internal amenities, as well as the proximity to some of the other amenities, restaurants and the beach in particular, it's my contention that the cars would not be entering and exiting the site as often as the hotel only that exists there now would be. Because in many cases, people are going to want to take their car out because they're going to go somewhere where it's a little further than they want to walk. Whereas this would not eliminate that, but it would reduce the number of trips in and out of the parking lot. In terms of negative criteria, there is, in my opinion, no substantial negative impact being made. And in spite of the variance requested, there is ample light, air, and open space provided, given that no coverage variances are being requested. So we haven't overdeveloped in terms of coverage of the building.
And I think you mentioned this before, we're actually decreasing it from non-compliant to compliant, correct?
That is correct. So the requested variances, while we, I think, still need a variance for the number of parking spaces, is more operational than it is the number of parking spaces because of the way we're going to be using the property, which is a unique way, yes, I agree, would limit the number of parking spaces truly needed to 75, providing 79. But if we were to open the doors and be pure open to the public, 135 is actually the number. I agreed. And as already stated, while stacked parking is not permitted here, it is recognized in the ordinance for a Victorian hotel. And I do note that a Victorian hotel has a very limited definition of what qualifies as a Victorian hotel.
But if I recall correctly, the catch for a Victorian hotel is that if you're going to have that, one, the size of the stacked lots has to be, I think it's 9 by 18, if I'm quoting that correctly. And on top of that, exclusively valet, no self-parking.
That's correct.
And we would comply with both in this instance, correct?
Right, except we don't fit the definition of Victorian.
Understood, yeah.
And you alluded to the definition of a Victorian hotel just a minute ago. What
Yes.
is that definition?
I actually have it here. I anticipated this might come up. So it's defined in section, I think it's 525-4 of the ordinance, a structure with at least 100 rooms, the main portion of which was constructed during or within 15 years after the reign of Victoria Alexandrina, Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, 1837 to 1901.
Well, her granddaughter just died, but I don't think that.
So it's hyper particular for sure.
Yeah, and that hyper-particular definition was crafted for a very specific reason. It was never intended, I don't believe, to apply to new construction of any kind. It was to give the people who owned those Victorian properties the opportunity to convert them into B&Bs if they wanted to, but understanding that the on-site parking was going to be a problem for them. They were never envisioning, and maybe I'm wrong, I wasn't around then, I was only about 6 when this ordinance was passed.
I don't think it was designed for B&Bs because the other portion of it is a structure with at least 100 rooms.
Right.
So it's meant to cover, I think, very, very large structures with very high
Built during
parking.
the reign of Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
Right. But it specifically did not envision it being used or applied in any way to new construction.
No, and I think what we're trying to do, we're not necessarily saying we're Victorian, therefore we meet this. What we're trying to do
No, I
is
know
draw
you
a
are.
comparison. We're dealing with a hotel that doesn't have 100 rooms, rather has 53. But the rationale of behind the valet parking, behind the size of the spots, designed to ensure that the parking remains on-site and off the road. We're simply trying to draw a comparison and say this is something that Cape May does recognize elsewhere, and we think it's comparable, the rationale is comparable here.
Oh, you want to hang your hat on the Victorian thing? Okay. I just want to make sure I understand why you're doing it.
Okay. And one last positive that I did forget to mention, in terms of the shared access easement that exists between Lot 1501, which is us, and 15.02, where there is a house constructed now. There is existing parking on that easement, head-in parking, and it's used as a drive aisle for 7 or 8 parking spaces that currently exist there. It has a trash dumpster. I measured the other day, 16 feet from the corner of the house, and it's not contained inside a enclosure like which would be required for a new facility. As such, under the proposed conditions, those parking spaces would not be there, they'd be removed. The dumpster would be put inside the building near the entrance to 2nd Avenue. So it's going to be moved far away from that. So it's going to limit the amount that the hotel uses that access easement compared to today.
And I think the sole use of that easement area, because we're not necessarily using the easement, but the area adjacent to that, it is strictly going to be limited to loading and unloading.
Right, we have a loading zone that will be intermittently used, but cars will still easily be able to bypass that loading zone, even if it's being used.
And that's actually the current loading zone as it exists today, correct? So that's not changing?
Correct.
Okay.
Speaking of that, I had one more question. Do you have this parking lot set up?
Yes.
Yeah. The receiving and wheeled trash area, from the design of this piece of paper, it doesn't look like there's any way to get in or out of it.
It would be from the exterior of the building.
You're not showing any kind of door anywhere. That's just,
You mean a door to put trash in there in the first place
Yeah.
from the hotel?
and to get it out into the dumpster, which is going to be in the easement. Is the access to that going to be through the building?
So the access is by opening doors to the building that are normally kept shut from where the loading zone is, and there are doors inside the garage to put refuse into the trash container to begin with.
And the first floor plan shows an elevator over that space, but it doesn't show it at the bottom on the ground level.
I think I need the architect.
Yeah. Steve, can we, because I think we're talking about the floor plan here, so this might be your area.
Can I ask a question? I don't know of which professional at this point. So you've got 19 employees, they're all going to valet park?
No, the 18 employees, I think, is just the maximum per large shift. And actually, that was something that I think both Mike and Manny were going to testify to, and they can be brought up to do so. That's actually just, and if you can address that.
Yes, the parking lot is sized for all 19 employees to park on-site under the building.
In the valet, and they'll valet park?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And the valet parking, so I pull in, I get out of my car, I go into the hotel, the next day I'm checking out. What's the operation? How is my car getting out without having cars stacked and parked on Beach or wherever the easement?
There's one way in and one way out. So there's two aisles that cars can be stacked.
Okay.
One coming in and on the other side coming out.
So 9 cars are going like this? So I'm car number 4.
Well, there are parking spaces.
Okay, so you could easily pull me out and get into the other
Yes.
side?
And I'm not saying.
I'm trying to visualize.
Yeah, and I'm
it.
not saying there won't be times that cars have to jockey around, especially a couple months out of the year.
Okay.
But that's what valet parking is. So they can take advantage of some of the drive aisle space to park cars.
I just find it interesting that you're going to valet park all your employees.
7.
Well, I don't think there's any other way to do it.
No, there isn't.
It's either
but-
all or none.
Yeah.
9. Did you answer my question?
I think he's checking the floor plan now.
No. We were giving you a little breather there to figure out what the elevator looks like.
Yeah. Trash comes down the elevator.
Oh, that's
Goes
right.
out the door.
All right, so it comes down the
These
elevator.
can be all employees.
Okay, so we got the trash coming into the space. How do we get it out of the space? Is there going to be a door there?
Yes, there's a door there, so the,
It's on the architectural.
Yeah.
It's not on this plan?
correct. So the truck will be able to pull in, pick up the dumpster, load it, and then put it back inside the building.
Okay, now also on this plan, do you have it there?
Yeah, I have,
Right next to that receiving area and wheeled trash area, there's 7 parking spaces. Am I right in assuming?
That's
that
correct, yes.
They're also stacked?
yes. I mean,
No?
there is no wall there they could potentially pull out.
Oh, they're going to pull out into the easement?
They can, yes.
There is no wall there?
Right.
Okay. Well, there's a wall on the plan.
I
so-
know that.
Okay.
Requirement that says if you're going to have the parking underneath the structure, it has to be enclosed.
I believe you're right. So I originally designed the site plan for those 7 spaces to be stacked.
So what?
Well, you just heard your engineer. He said if they're underneath the building, it needs to be enclosed. So
Right.
those spaces will be stacked.
So there's now we're up to 14, now we're up
It's the
to,
same, 14, it's still 14 spaces.
wait, no, you've got the 14 lined up over here, but now we're going to add another 7 on that?
There's a total of 14 stacked spaces.
On your plan, it shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that side, 5 on that side, 2 and 2, that's 14. And then these 7 would be 21.
Oh, okay, I stand corrected, you'd be right.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I gotta write something down on what just happened. I have to write something down on what just happened there. So, Greg, help me out.
Essentially, I think it's, we're
Just recounted and it said there's 21 stacked parking spaces
Rather than 14.
rather than 14.
And to Deputy Mayor McDade's point, we heard earlier.
One second, Mr. Scott, hold on. I want to get that resume down on paper. And that's because they're closing in a wall that was going to be an exterior, open to the exterior, but when that closes, it creates the stacked parking?
Right.
Okay.
Can I go?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Appreciate it.
Deputy Mayor McDade's question was answered earlier. I think you pull, the valet operation, you're going to pull inside the garage.
Yes,
Stack your car there. There's going to be no stacking on Second Street,
correct.
right? Because there'll be parking meters there.
Perhaps. Again, I can't speak for what the city may or may not want to do with those, with
Got
that
it.
new curb space there.
Got it. Now, also, you show You show 2 EV parking spaces in this map,
Right,
but one of the EV parking spaces is also a handicap space.
that's right. That's typically how we do it. The law is a little bit gray, but it appears that you have to provide at least one of each, one handicap and one regular parking space.
Is there a numerical load that determines how many spaces you have
Yes.
for handicap?
Yes.
What is that?
It varies, but it's roughly 2% of the total.
2% of the total?
Roughly. I mean, there's a table, and I don't have it memorized.
And the EV is same formula, or is it different?
No. Oh, yes, there is a formula the state has for, I believe it's one space for the first 50 parking spaces. And so we have 2.
Okay, so you have 2, but one's actually doing double duty.
Correct.
So the eventuality that 2 people show up with an EV vehicle and neither of them are handicapped, they don't get to use that.
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Now, also, on that 7 stacked spaces that we found on the back wall there, 3 of them look like they're not consistent with the minimum size of a parking space, because there's a wall there.
There is, but there is extra space there to do that, so they're all 9 by 18.
So the 5 that aren't, well, one of them actually is. So the 4 that aren't there, they're extra large.
Yes,
And then the 3 that are against the wall in a limited space, they're still legal. Is that what you're saying?
yes, all of them are 9 by 18. There is a little extra space between them for the columns.
Okay, and also on the documents that you provided the committee, you included a document from 2011, which concerned the easement. It says that the 20-foot wide easement over the proposed new lot 15.01 is for the benefit of the proposed lot 15.02. You're going to use part of that, however, as a space for dumpsters?
No,
No,
for the loading zone.
Yes, no, it wouldn't be for a dumpster.
It's
It'd be-
going to be a loading zone.
And
current-
it's what it is, that it's, the loading zone is essentially staying the same as it exists today in the same.
And then also the easement has a row of vegetation on the far side.
Yes.
Is that part of the easement, or is that in addition to the easement?
No, it's part of the easement.
So the easement is, the width of the easement for vehicle use is actually less than 25.
That's correct.
What is it?
No, I don't,
I don't think.
no, it's.
Well, you can't drive
it's
over
not less than
bushes.
25 feet.
No.
I mean, you can, but
It's not less than 25.
No, it's not less than 25 feet.
the easement says 25 feet.
Right. And
But
it's
part
basi-
of it is a planting of bushes, trees. There's a big tree at the bottom of it.
Right.
Is that part of the 25? And in which case, how can it be an easement for access to the back lot?
You mind if I come up, Craig? It's 20 feet. It's only 20. No.
I know.
And while you're doing that, if I could ask a question, for the EV parking spaces, is that limited to the resort guests or open to anyone off the street that needs to charge their EV?
Limited to the resort guests.
Okay.
It doesn't show it, but here.
I mean, is he asking what the cartway is? Is he asking what the paved cartway is?
To that masonry wall.
Wait a minute, let me show you. It's a big tree in the back there.
Dennis, we'd like to move along if we can. I think he's got an answer. but
Yeah.
We'd like to
So
move along.
the easement and the paving is 25 feet wide. The shrubbery shown, the greenery, is actually on the next lot, and it's already there.
But it's inside the retaining wall that's there, right? There's a retaining wall on that property.
Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly where that retaining wall is relative to
So
the
you're
easement.
saying.
But it's not on our property.
You're
It's
saying
not, it's not
shrubbery
included.
and the
within-
retaining wall are all on the other side of the property.
There-
Anything that's proposed is on this side of your side of the retaining wall,
Okay,
so it does cut down on.
so it is a little limited.
Little.
It's less than 25 feet. for the paved area.
However, to the extent, if the board wanted us to remove that, that's something we'd certainly.
Remove the shrubbery?
Yeah.
Whatever the board's pleasure is in terms of if you want to leave all of that, the 25 feet without the addition of the shrubbery, that's certainly something we're going to consider removing. That's fine.
We could ask the environment.
Sure.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
While we're talking about that area, so I raised the question as to whether it's appropriate for you to be proposing a 12 by 55-foot loading area within that easement. Who is the easement in favor of? Have they signed off on that? What is the legality of you doing that?
So in terms of the legal analysis, I mean, it's a non-exclusive easement. Obviously, the property owner, which we would be of that land, were permitted to use it. It's being used as a loading area now. It would continue to be so. And again, this isn't meant to be kind of adversarial with the board. It's just stating what the law, as I see it, exists. And Mr. King is welcome to disagree with me. The terms of the easement, the applicant's rights under the easement holder's rights under the easement, what we're permitted to do and not permitted to do is not within the purview of the board necessarily. If the easement holder is of the opinion that it should not be there, that it runs interference, the appropriate mechanism by which to enforce that, or for us to do so, vice versa, is in Superior Court. So I don't necessarily, I'm just...
From a zoning standpoint, the reason I asked the question is because you're required to have a loading zone, and if you're not able to put it there, then you need a variance from that. So that's the appropriate analysis for this board, is can you provide it or can you not provide it?
Yes, we can provide it in that area.
Here's my view of it, to the extent it matters. If it is, it appears to be a non-exclusive easement, which means that you can have an easement where, I don't want to talk about dominant and servient estate. The big property and then the flag lot, okay, we'll call it that. So that's a bad example, but the narrow part, you can have where that's exclusive, where only the property behind it can use it. And that means the property that gave it to him can't use it at all. That's an exclusive easement. But then you can have a non-exclusive easement where both parties can still use it. All right? This is, by all appearances, a non-exclusive easement, meaning both parties can use it. The extent to which each one of them can use it, I do a lot of easement litigation, you know, they can't unreasonably interfere with the purposes of the easement, right? But some judge has to decide that. Zoning boards don't decide that, and really the applicants don't decide that. What we do is zoning. So what I say that we do is, we say you need they want to put a loading zone there, fine. We say you need a loading zone, and the loading zone is there. If they can't put the loading zone there, then they can't build the building. But it's for them to work that out. If they try to put a loading zone there, and then the, what we call the dominant estate, the people who they gave it to, go to court, and the court says, no, that's an unreasonable use of that area, you can't put a loading zone there, then they can't build the building because they can't meet our condition. But that's for them to work out. We're doing zoning. Zoning says they proposed a loading zone there. It looks like the right size loading zone. I'll leave the engineers to decide that, and that's where it goes. And if for some reason some judge decides that that's an unreasonable use, then that's their problem.
And just one quick addition, because you
Disagree with that analysis?
Not at all. I just want to add to that, actually, supplement it. According to the easement itself, because I'm going to read it into the record very quickly, it's recorded in book 1004, pages 630 to 634 in Cape May County. It says, quote verbatim, it's a non-exclusive easement for pedestrian and vehicular ingress and egress for the benefit of block 1012, lot 14, lot 15.02. So the term non-exclusive easement is right there in the language.
Some judge is going to decide whether a loading zone is ingress.
No, I
We're
wouldn't
not gonna do
necessarily
that
disagree
tonight.
there, yeah.
We're going to say you're going to decide if that loading zone, we're going to require the loading zone to be there.
It's required,
They can't have it,
proposing
that's up to
there.
them.
If the
And
board
Rich?
decides they can't have it, then they're not complying with their site plan approval.
Rich, would a judge also decide what this language means in terms of the easement is for the benefit of the proposed lot? Would that factor into a judge's decision about whether or not this is doable?
A lot of things will factor in. Apparently, it's a loading zone now, and cars go up and down it, so, for the hotel. So, I mean, usage is a factor, custom and usage and past practices. So some,
I think-
some judge will do all that. We are not doing that tonight. We have enough to do. We're putting in a loading zone, the loading zone's required, and the applicant will either work it out with the other owner or a judge will decide it. We're not doing that.
Just one more question about that. Is the current loading zone inside the current property bound? Or is it in the easement?
No,
Both.
those are the
Both.
purpose of an easement is that an easement is on the property.
No, I get
That's
it.
why it's an easement. Otherwise, it wouldn't be their property.
I get it, but the current hotel or motel has a loading zone. Is it inside the property of the hotel, or is it in the loading, or is it in the easement?
Okay, I want to restate that. The easement is on the hotel property. It's just a portion of the hotel property that can be used by someone else.
Okay,
Right?
so-
Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's the difference between a flag lot and an easement. If it was a flag lot, it'd be owned by the property behind it, and they would own that area, and we wouldn't even be using the word easement.
So you're moving the whole loading zone fully into the easement? That's what they're...
No, the loading zone is staying in the same spot that it exists today.
Okay.
It's not being, that's the only thing in the easement, that's currently in the easement area that's not being moved. The trash and recycling, the additional spaces that the hotel is using, all of that is being removed, so we're actually lessening any level of interference, and I'm using
Well,
that,
you're-
not necessarily as a term of art, but
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not going to litigate the case, but
Sure.
it has a restaurant now that wasn't there before, so it's going to be a different loading, but that's for someone else to deal with. The board, I'm just directing my board not to deal with that. Put a loading zone there, and whether they can have it or not, lawyers and judges, and hopefully maybe neighbors will even work that out, shockingly, so we'll see what happens. So let them deal with that. I don't, we have 7 minutes left tonight, so let's use it other than on the easement. Go ahead.
All right, just flying through some of the other site issues. The building height and the cupola are all compliant with the ordinance. We agree to conform to the flood damage protection requirements, and that's basically floodgates as opposed to lifting the building higher because it is commercial. And we do show the 12 by 55 loading area as required. The lighting in the pool area will be provided, but it will be a dark sky compliant type of lighting system. The freestanding sign, depending on where that ends up, will still be externally lit, not internally lit. We are providing the EV parking spaces as required. We are confirming that self-parking will not be permitted on the site, but it'll be all valet parking, thank you. And the right-of-way improvements will be placing curb and sidewalk along. And again, we'll have to get approval from the city and also to determine how many parking spaces and if they even want parking on Beach and Second Avenue. But we are available to provide that if they desire that. I need help on the trash and recycling schedule other than business hours, I think. Need something a little more definitive than that, Craig?
Yeah, it just said during business hours, but hotels are open 24/7. So like, we want to make sure that the loading area and the unloading of recyclables, whatever, is not going to wake everyone up in the middle of the night. So we need some,
so I think Manny, being the current operator of the current hotel, when is trash picked up?
I don't know. It's on it's regularly scheduled. I know that just to answer, when that lot was subdivided by this board, I don't know, 2010 or so, and that's when, that was the creation of the flag lot, well, not the flag lot, the lot and the easement. The easement gives the property owner the right to get in and out of his place, and currently, and since that time, since we've owned the jetty since 2005, trash has been back there and deliveries have been taken back there.
So very quickly, you said you didn't know for sure exactly when trash is picked up, but it's at the same time every day? Or how often a week? And
3 times a week, 3 times a week. I can get you a trash schedule. I don't want to
can we
guess.
restrict it to 9 to 5?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And yes, the same for recycling.
And then lastly, stormwater management is complied with because we're actually reducing the coverage, impervious coverage of the site compared to existing. So it's a positive in that sense.
Any additional questions for Mr. Schaefer, either from an engineering or planner perspective from the board? Seeing none, that concludes the applicant's primary testimony. I would simply just reserve the right to be able to respond to both the objector, their counsel, and public comment as well, and whether it's via cross-examination or by bringing our witnesses back up to respond to some of those comments. So I'd reserve that right.
Before we go too much further, I just would like to ask, is there the opportunity, you discussed at the very beginning that you had conceptual approval from the HPC, correct?
Yes.
Is there a way to provide this board with some documentation of that? Because we could be going through this.
I'm telling you, depending when they did it, for what.
Minutes, could we pull up, there's got to be some mechanism.
You can get a transcript of the application, but for most of my tenure here, there was no document that came out of conceptual approval, except for the last maybe 18 months.
And that honestly probably was the source of the confusion. I probably had asked the applicant or their professionals for the conceptual approval that I know they now give. When they said they didn't have it, shame on me, assumed that we didn't have any at all, but we did have conceptual approval. But I, without a doubt, know it was when Mr. Feinberg was still there.
Twice. Twice.
From the full commission, yes.
I have no idea. I will tell you that the last application that I remember for this project, the place was taller and different, and there was a height variance requested at one point.
Dorsha, Steve Fenwick's wife got it for us in 2006, and then sometime around 2010, Steve got it based on a change.
But again, we would agree.
So,
We'll get you.
I am just
will have
requesting
it.
that at some point, because obviously we're running short on time, that I would like to see that at some point, if we're going to, progress, there's got to be a mechanism, whether it's minutes or a letter or something, that the HPC gave some conceptual approval, because we could be going through all this rigmarole and then end up right back here if the HPC said, hey, you got to
Yeah,
change
if the last time
X,
you
Y,
presented
Z.
to them was in 2010.
Well, I know.
I just think it's important that you go back to them now, have a conversation about someone finding documentation that you got some type, they've changed their design standards, so it's an entirely new design standard. So
But
I'm
we'd
not
be
sure
in,
how that impacts your project.
I
but
think we'd-
you would want to know that.
Sure. We'll get you the original approvals, and if there's a conflict in the design standards, we'll go back.
absolutely. I would just say we kind of be in that position anyway, because I know the HPC will not give final approval for any project until that.
I understand that.
Fair
I'm
enough.
trying to make sure that all the ducks are, as we're moving forward,
Understood.
questions can be asked, answered, and then,
And also, HPC acts in two different ways. They have subcommittees that review plans, then they have complete approval by the full board. We need to know which one that is, and we need a documentation of it. Also, Rich, to answer your question, back in 2022, I guess, the building height and the proposal was 43 feet, non-compliance, non-conforming, but it's been reduced to 35 plus 5 for the cupola.
I just knew there was different shapes to the building.
Yeah, it was
since
43.
Yeah.
2010, But I don't know what they approved.
Yep.
Okay, look, it's 10 o'clock. Normally Craig would be on now for his present. Are you guys done? Are you done now?
Yes, again, just simply reserving the right to eventually respond to the objectors and to public comment.
Normally Craig would be saying something at this point, and then we would open it up to the public, and then based on whatever their questions are, we might have questions for your experts or something like that, and along those lines. And would allow the experts, your expert to present something on behalf of the objectors. So when could we be able to reschedule this? Like, what do you think?
There won't be any new resubmission, is that correct?
Not at this time, no. There's no intention because the board has made clear they want to move forward with this particular proposal.
We have another application to be heard, I believe it's May 13th. So I don't know what you're thinking. Do you want to do it in June? Do you want to do it at a work session?
Well, I don't mind doing it at a work session, but
May 3rd.
you have a problem doing it at a work session? So what date are we looking at then?
April 22nd.
If it's not the 13th,
So we have April 22nd, May 27th.
I'm not available on April 22nd, that I know.
who's
But
left?
May 27th, I believe, is available.
May 27th?
May 27th is a work session meeting.
May. That was the date that was provided.
I won't be here. Okay, I think a bunch of us have some conflicts on the 27th also, so
June 10th?
This should be fine.
May 13th?
Oh, I'm definitely.
June 10th is available as well.
yeah. All right, so we'll do it June 10th. Do they have to
No.
do anything? Nothing?
This matter will be continued on June 10th at 6:30 unless the committee changes the times between now and then.
And you know what, I'll make it easy. If the committee changes the time, just let me know, and I'll renotice for the new time, just to make it very easy for the members of the public, so they know exactly what time to be there.
All right. So this application will be continued on June 10th?
June 10th.
June 10th. There will be no further notice if it's to take place at 6:30 on June 10th. If that date or time changes, the applicant would probably have to renotice. But as of now, this will be your only notice, so if you intend to appear, come at that time. Thank you.
We are sorry that
Thank you.
the public had no say today, but sometimes that's just the way it happens. So we motion to adjourn now, or what? Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Nay. Peter? Mike's off.
Everybody keep your oh, no one will.